The giant god clan is the most powerful race in the starry sky. Those so-called naturally born beast gods are merely born within the confines of time and space, while our giant god clan is the most perfect creation nurtured by the starry sky, the first and foremost race across the entire cosmos. This statement was not an exaggeration. How many naturally born beast gods were there, shaped by the myriad of things in the vastness of time and space? Just a few, and they couldn't even reproduce. This was the most crucial point. The giant god clan, on the other hand, not only could reproduce but also possessed the inheritance memories that the beast gods lacked. That was the true treasure. In addition to the giant god clan members who descended into the river of time and space, there were also powerful giant god clan beings born in the vast expanse of the starry sky, roaming in the boundless cosmos. Those were the real powerhouses. With a snap of their fingers, they could annihilate a dimension. Jian Wushuang listened, utterly astounded. He never expected that there would be such a powerful race in the starry sky. Frelesa looked at Jian Wushuang and comforted. You don't need to worry. Being able to master the power of life as a talent like you is rarer than even the giant god clan. The universe master is just a beginning. Your journey is still long. The power of life was a magical force capable of creating all things. No matter how powerful the giant god clan was, they were still just a part of the myriad of life. How strong could they be if they couldn't transcend all living things? Even special life forms were just lives granted by the origin source of the universe. Unless it was a powerful race with a unique will, only then could they abandon the power of life. However, such races either perished prematurely or lacked strength. No matter the universe, the dimension, or the starry sky, all express a profound love for life. This was the first and unalterable rule. In this way, Jian Wushuang truly had hope, standing at the supreme peak of this starry sky. However, ever since Nieyuan could enter the starry sky, Jian Wushuang dared not overestimate himself. He used to believe he was chosen by fate, but now he no longer saw it that way. There were things beyond the heavens and people beyond people. No room for complacency. My lord jests. I am just a Tao lord. Even the Tao merge is a tribulation for me. I dare not peer into the universe master, Jian Wushuang humbly said. Upon hearing the word tribulation, Xunling Ferlace's expression changed. Then he chuckled. You are right. Tribulations should not be taken lightly. Even the universe master may fall in each major tribulation, let alone you youngsters. Jian Wushuang was sensitive to information about the universe master. Upon hearing Xunling mention it, he quickly inquired, the universe master can fall in tribulations? Don't you think the universe master is immune to tribulations? Jian Wushuang shook his head and asked, It's just that I am curious. What kind of tribulations does the universe master face? Is it because of some battles? Not exactly. Let me tell you this. In your Qixin temple, there were many universe masters in the past. The strongest one, as you should know, was very powerful. Even compared to some predecessors in my memory, he was formidable and went against the natural order. He could single-handedly suppress a dimension. But even with such strength, he succumbed to his own great calamity. That's the tribulation. Xunling spoke with deep emotion. Although suppressed by the Qixin, Jian Wushuang deeply admired the strength of that universe master. After all, he was a powerful figure comparable to the superiors of the giant god clan. Was it caused by external forces? Or was it a calamity dictated by the rules? Jian Wushuang found it incredible. The Qixin fell, but the inheritors like him didn't know why. Initially, the first true king didn't say much about the fall of the Qixin. He had always speculated and even connected it to his encounter in the Demon Sound Hall. On the narrow bridge, he saw the Qixin but couldn't see the face clearly. However, the tone was filled with resentment. Moreover, his origin source Tao was severed. It devoured a path, forcibly extracted from the spatial origin source. This was a means of self-reducing strength. Xunling Ferlesa had a nostalgic look in his eyes as he spoke solemnly. It's the origin source consciousness of the starry sky. As soon as he said this, as if an invisible pair of eyes descended, fixing their gaze on the first prison. The rest didn't sense that peculiar feeling, but the two conversing individuals felt it keenly. The consciousness origin source of the starry sky. It was a powerful consciousness several levels higher than the consciousness of the cosmic origin source. The original universe possessed an origin source consciousness, and each domain had its innate origin source Tao. When a domain was controlled by an emperor, the origin source consciousness would return to the cosmic origin source. In turn, the cosmic origin source consciousness was under the control of the universe master, leading the universe origin source consciousness back to the temporal origin source. Above time and space was the origin source consciousness of the starry sky. That was the true summit. Although Xinling being was filled with reverence and sensed the arrival of that consciousness, he was not worried. He might worry about the consciousness of the cosmic origin source, but the consciousness of the starry sky could not interfere with them. This was recorded in the memories of the inheritors. Even the superpowerful beings of their giant god clan, who dared to provoke the consciousness of the starry sky, had faced no consequences. Although nothing happened, Xinling did not have the courage to provoke. After all, he was not a superpowerful being. If he had the time, perhaps he would consider testing it. You can feel it. Xinling noticed that Jian Wushuang's forehead was sweating, as if he was suppressed by something. Jian Wushuang nodded without answering. He felt a bit suffocated. That consciousness seemed to be standing on top of his head, making his breathing somewhat unstable, and the life power within his body was also boiling. Usurper! Jian Wushuang's eye sockets suddenly contracted, and a voice echoed in his mind. His entire being seemed to have transcended the space of this place, even breaking free from the original flow of time. Simple words, yet they affected him so profoundly. The sense of fear shattered his mental state in an instant. Phew! In a moment, he regained his composure, gasping for breath. Beads of cold sweat instantly formed on his forehead. You, a Tao Lord, can actually sense the consciousness of the starry sky. Xinling's eye sockets seemed on the verge of bursting. He stared at Jian Wushuang in disbelief, his tone filled with astonishment. Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Could only the universe master sense it? Upon reflection, it made sense. As a Tao Lord, he couldn't even comprehend time. How could he possibly sense the wondrous consciousness that transcended time and space like that of the starry sky? Moreover, he heard a mysterious voice. Usurper! Jian Wushuang secretly worried in his heart. What is a usurper? In essence, it's a robber. Is he a usurper? Yes. And no. The life power, does it belong to life or not? This is a pseudo-question. No one can give a definite answer. Even Xinling say that few master the power of life. The other party possessed the memories of an inheritor, equivalent to having the knowledge of the entire giant god clan. The power of life was said to be extremely rare, so rare that it seemed he alone held it within this space and time. In the entire starry sky, there were only a few who possessed the power of life. Speaking narrowly, this power was bestowed by one's parents. Broadly speaking, it was a gift from the universe. But how did he possess such an ability? Was he a usurper? A thief of the life power bestowed by the consciousness of the starry sky? No! Jian Wushuang's inner resolve echoed. The defiance he often spoke of was not just empty words. In the mundane mortal small worlds, defying meant challenging a small realm, and he had achieved that, or else he wouldn't have reached this point today. Now, in the vast universe, defying meant reversing the consciousness of the universe origin source. He didn't even know if he had accomplished this. Suddenly, a consciousness of the starry sky emerged, claiming he was a usurper and harboring resentment. Did he, in one step, directly defy even the heavens? Jian Wushuang found it unbelievable, and Xinling felt the same way. A Tao Lord being able to sense the origin source consciousness of the domain was already remarkable. Usually, at the Tao Lord level, defying meant becoming a transcendent Tao Lord after gaining recognition from the spatial origin source. Beyond that was the consciousness of the universe origin source, something only an emperor could glimpse. But now, Jian Wushuang, a mere Tao Lord, could attract the attention of the consciousness of the starry sky. The other party must have transcended numerous levels. Could it be because of the power of life? Xinling was also puzzled. According to some information in the inheritance memories, their understanding of the power of life was quite comprehensive. There had once been a mighty being in the starry sky who wielded the power of life, creating a river of life. It was isolated from time and space, unreachable by anyone. Later, some people discovered a broken ancient river, and the giant god clan dispatched powerful individuals to investigate. Ultimately, they confirmed that it was the legendary river of life. As for the whereabouts of that super-powerful being who wielded the power of life, no one knew. However, this legend had been passed down for a long time. Many believed that the being had not fallen, but the river of life created by them had withered. If he hadn't fallen, where would he have gone? Looking at Jian Wushuang now, Xinling had some hesitation. He even wavered in his intention to take Jian Wushuang away. Any cultivator who defied the heavens was a disaster, a menace wherever they went. Perhaps one day even he would fall alongside Jian Wushuang. Lord Xinling, this consciousness of the starry sky? Jian Wushuang wanted to ask, but was stopped by Xinling. Xinling Forlesa pressed his palm in the air and said, "Don't mention this matter again. When your strength grows, you will understand. Let me tell you about the Universe Master." Bored anyway, the two began to chat. The Universe Master, said to be the master of the universe, was not so simple as to control a universe. Just like some weaker emperors, even to control a lower realm, they needed to be a Tier 2 emperor. For middle realms, a Tier 3 emperor was required. Higher realms needed a Tier 4 emperor. The Universe Master was no different. Entering the realm of the Universe Master, it was not so easy to control an original universe. To be precise, one couldn't be called the Universe Master without mastering the universe. After all, if one hadn't mastered the universe, there was no talk of being the Universe Master. In reality, the title of Universe Master was just a label. Above the Emperor was the Tribulation Realm. The Tribulation Realm was divided into 9 tribulations. Only after completing the first 3 tribulations could one qualify to control the universe. However, very few strong individuals could complete the first 3 tribulations. Many Tribulation Realm experts, if they weren't confident in overcoming the tribulations, would suppress their own strength. Jian Wushuang felt a bit emotional. It turned out that the pinnacle of the universe was not as glamorous as it seemed. If those emperors knew, they probably wouldn't be so eager for it. After all, emperors faced no tribulations, especially the Supreme Peak experts, whose state of mind was perfect, and they were immortal. Crossing to the Tribulation Realm, on the other hand, carried the risk of perishing. A doubt arose in Jian Wushuang's heart. If one could suppress their strength and postpone crossing the tribulation until they were powerful enough, wouldn't that work? But when he voiced this idea, Xinling laughed heartily. If it were that simple, it wouldn't be the Tribulation Realm. The time for suppression is limited, and when the Great Tribulation descends, no one can escape. Even the strong figures like those in the Qixin Temple and our superiors within the clan couldn't do it. In your cultivation terms, it's called inevitable tribulation, Xinling explained with a faint smile, dismissing Jian Wushuang's naive thought. Jian Wushuang chuckled as well, realizing how foolish his suggestion was. If it were that simple, the demise of the Qixin Temple wouldn't have occurred. Xinling added, however, everything has a glimmer of hope. If one can't cross the tribulation and can't suppress it either, some may choose to sever their own origin source. This way, they lose the hope of further advancement but can lead a carefree life. It's a common occurrence in the vast river of time and space. Otherwise, Tribulation Realm experts would have died out long ago. So, you mean when the Qixin faced the tribulation, he severed his own origin source because he wasn't confident in crossing it? Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised and also felt a bit disheartened. Qixin, such a formidable figure, had willingly severed his own origin source. This was an extremely difficult choice for practitioners on the path of strength, and most would face death rather than cut off their own origin source. Upon hearing this, Xinling shook his head without hesitation and said, "You've guessed wrong on this one. I'm not sure the exact reasons. Qixin severed his own origin source, but in the end, He perished under his own great tribulation. When I was suppressed here, some tribulation realm experts mentioned that if Qixin didn't sever his devouring origin source, he wouldn't have been able to cross the tribulation at all. So he chose to sever it first. Unfortunately, after cutting off his own origin source, Qixin's strength plummeted, and he eventually fell. Xinling sighed with a hint of regret. Jian Wushuang finally understood. He held great respect for Qixin in his heart. If even a figure like Qixin couldn't face the tribulation, it would undoubtedly disturb his state of mind. Later, he curiously asked, Lord Xinling, I wonder how many times Qixin faced the great tribulations in the past? Qixin fell during the 8th Great Tribulation, the 8th Tribulation Realm. It was an insurmountable height. Once crossed, Qixin would truly become the master of time and space, a superpower even in the vastness of the starry sky. Jian Wushuang was deeply shocked. He had initially thought that Qixin would fall in the 9th tribulation, but unexpectedly, it was the 8th. Don't underestimate the 8th tribulation. Xinling Bing sensed Jian Wushuang's thoughts and exclaimed, among the 9 tribulations, the 3rd, 6th, and 9th are the toughest. Reaching the 8th tribulation already allows Qixin to dominate the river of time and space. If Qixin hadn't severed his own origin source in the past, perhaps he would have successfully crossed. Unfortunately, even if he had become a powerhouse in the 8th tribulation realm, there might not have been the Qixin temple as it exists today. But there was still a question. Even though Qixin failed to overcome the tribulation, how did the Moro-spatial realm collapse? Qixin won't go crazy and take the entire Moro timespace with him to his grave, right? Even Xinling Frelesa is unaware of this, perhaps only Xinling knows. In fact, reaching the tribulation realm is not as bad as you think. After crossing the first 3 tribulations, you gain control over a universe, becoming the universe master. It greatly benefits your cultivation, and the time between each tribulation spans countless epochs, providing enough time to cope. Becoming the universe master comes with countless advantages. The resources at your disposal are also different. You can nurture your family, sect, and strength. You can even turn your own universe into a realm that nurtures treasures, relying on countless treasures for cultivation. It's a whole new level. After crossing the first 3 tribulations, everything undergoes a qualitative change. Once you control a universe, as long as you're not too unlucky, you can smoothly pass the 4th tribulation and even the 5th. But the 6th tribulation is different. Even with a universe as support, crossing it is extremely difficult. The 3 kings of the past and the current Fuego were all experts in the 5th tribulation realm. The 3 divine masters of the Qixin temple were experts in the 6th tribulation realm. In the entire Moro timespace, there were a total of 4 experts in the 6th tribulation realm, and 3 of them pledged allegiance to Qixin. Qixin was an expert in the 7th tribulation realm, naturally attracting numerous individuals seeking refuge. It was not just about having a powerful backer. The most crucial aspect was getting Qixin's guidance, which is of utmost importance. Jian Wushuang suddenly gained so much knowledge and continued to consume it. The path ahead seemed to brighten considerably. His current strength was at the peak of Tier 6, and as long as the Tao merge was successful, he would soon step into the supreme peak. In fact, the distance to the Universe Master was not very far. Naturally, he needed to know more. As the two conversed unknowingly, 100 years passed. Meanwhile, the formidable beings assembled by Xinling were quietly preparing to descend. However, the two of them were completely unaware. In a vast array, hundreds of powerful individuals sat cross-legged on each eye of the formation. At the core, facing each other, were 3 individuals: Jian Wushuang, Xinling Frelesa, and Fuego. Suddenly, the heavens and the earth began to tremble. A powerful aura was descending. This aura came from underground, could break through the earth at any moment. The expression on Xinling's face changed drastically. He had a bad premonition deep within. This place was unidirectional, a fact he knew better than Xinling. The other party couldn't possibly ignore their own entrapment and come in person. As long as it wasn't the true body, he could fend off the opponent. But now that aura was gradually rising, and the power had surged to the point of crossing the tribulation realm. In these years, Jian Wushuang had been waiting for Fuego to recover from his injuries. Although Xinling's injuries were not deep and would only take a few years to heal, there was no rush. Presently, he wielded the strength of a half-step tribulation realm. Although Fuego had only alleviated his injuries and his strength had not improved significantly, the sudden emergence of the tribulation realm aura made it a difficult task for anyone to withstand. If the two joined forces, there was likely not much assurance. In this way, not only would time be wasted, but there was also a high possibility of being delayed. You stay here. I'll go alone. Xinling made a resolute decision and did not let Jian Wushuang stop. Instead, Xinling transformed into his true form, a golden dragon, and dashed out of the grand formation. On the dim earth, countless cracks began to appear. That aura was underground. Boom! Countless fragments of dust flew up. It was called dust, but each piece was like a towering mountain. The owner of the aura underground must be enormous. When Xinling saw the newcomer, his pupils contracted, exclaiming in shock, "Is it you?" The newcomer was not Xinling. If it was Xinling, Xinling would not be so astonished. He would only be shocked if Xinling's true body descended. A strange laughter echoed, and even from a distance, Jian Wushuang felt his scalp tingling. Separated by the grand formation, Jian Wushuang could only vaguely see the outline of the figure. It was a humanoid giant beast, with a towering figure resembling a piece of heaven and earth. A massive tail swayed. Xinling recognized the tribulation realm expert in front of him. Taking a breath of relief, he was afraid of not recognizing the other party, which would lead to a confrontation. Zhuang Zhong. Xinling Frosla revealed a hint of a smile, and said in a relaxed tone, "You're still alive." The giant beast, upon seeing Frosla, gradually shrank in size, but it still had a size of 10,000 feet. Facing Xinling from a distance, he said coldly, "You stench bug. Even you haven't died, so how can I possibly die first?" Stench bug. These two words pierced Xinling's heart. He, a proud member of the giant god clan, was called a stench bug. If it weren't for being in this place, he would have made the other person die 100 times to quell the hatred in his heart. The other party was just a small desolate beast at the first tribulation realm, considered the lowest level in the Moro spacetime. Such an ant dared to mock him, making Frelesa furious. However, despite his anger, the overall situation was more important now. He couldn't afford to provoke the other party. "Brother Zhuangzhong, you're just joking. I was merely fortunate." Xinling's face twisted, forced to lower his head. The opponent's strength far surpassed his own. After all, he was a genuine expert at the tribulation realm. Zhuangzhong was somewhat surprised. In the past, when Frelesa was called a stench bug, he would have been furious and ready to fight to the death. Now, why was he so easy to talk to? He tilted his head and looked behind Frelesa, revealing a sneer. "I thought you were locked up here and went crazy, losing all your temper. It turns out you have other plans," Zhuangzhong said, taking a step forward towards the large array. Xinling became anxious and quickly blocked his way. The situation was unfavorable. Now, he could only rely on his persuasive means to delay the opponent. "Brother Zhuangzhong, don't you want to leave this place?" Xinling asked. Zhuangzhong shook his head, uttering only two words, "Step aside." His voice was icy, leaving no room for negotiation. Xinling tried again to persuade, "I know where your demon sound bell is." This time, the other party paused for a moment, but it was just a momentary hesitation. He continued to approach the array. Seeing that persuasion didn't work, Xinling's expression turned cold. The radiance around him instantly surged, and his aura continued to rise. That aura had surpassed the divine generals and was even stronger than the 4 great temple lords. Half-step tribulation realm. Although it was not the absolute pinnacle of power, it couldn't be underestimated. "Are you going to stop me?" Zhuangzhong sneered. "Then I'll insist on going." Causing trouble for others was what he enjoyed the most. Besides, there was no way to leave this place. Even the fifth tribulation realm powerhouses were suppressed here initially. He didn't believe Frelesa could escape. The large array probably had other purposes, and now that he had just broken free, he was curious about what was really happening. Zhuangzhong, I don't know why you're still alive, but today you won't ruin my plans. Frelesa shouted angrily. A tremendous force surged from his mouth, directly toward Zhuangzhong. The immense energy illuminated the entire first prison. Zhuangzhong felt a sense of threat. As he turned, the scorching radiance fell on his face, and he had an expression of disbelief. Boom! Zhuangzhong's physical body instantly turned into powder. Even his breath was completely extinguished. Splatter! After the tremendous force subsided, relying on the faint trace of vitality lingering in the space, Zhuangzhong quickly restored his form. However, his aura weakened noticeably, indicating that he had been injured. Zhuangzhong was deeply shocked. The opponent's strength was clearly only at the half-step tribulation level. Yet they managed to injure him. For a moment, he dared not underestimate the opponent any longer. Xunling Frelesa, gasping for breath, once again blocked Zhuangzhong's path. With just one move, it consumed 1/10 of his origin source. It can be considered an exchange of injuries. If he really could not stop Zhuangzhong, he would try to consume his strength as much as possible. By then, Fuego should be able to handle it. Do I need to intervene now? Fuego also paid attention and transmitted his voice to Frelesa. He was genuinely concerned that Frelesa might not be able to hold back Zhuangzhong. Jian Wushuang was also conflicted. The current situation was uncertain, and he didn't know if it was good or bad. If Fuego hadn't regained his strength, he would never be able to leave. But if Fuego had recovered, he feared it might be a case of exploiting an advantage ruthlessly. Frelesa shook his head slowly, calm and composed, without transmitting his voice but speaking loudly. No need to worry about me. Are you so confident? Zhuangzhong was somewhat surprised, genuinely intimidated by Xunling Frelesa. The previous move did indeed harm his origin source, putting him in a dilemma for the moment. Emerging from the underground world, he had faced countless difficulties. When Qixin fell, the first batch of tribulation-level powerhouses were all suppressed in the depths of the underground, imprisoned in a furnace, serving as fuel for the Qixin temple. Now that he had finally escaped, he didn't want to face trouble as soon as he came out. Seeing the hesitation in the opponent, Frelesa's expression gradually turned cold. This was exactly what he wanted. Although he didn't know how the opponent managed to survive, since the opponent had just appeared, he probably didn't want to fight to the death. Feel free to try. Zhuangzhong stared at Frelesa, somewhat uncertain, and asked, The power emanating from that great formation is the power of life? When he first came out, he didn't pay much attention, but now that he could feel the power of the formation, he discovered that the force contained within the formation was actually the power of life. In ancient times, to obtain a large amount of life power, one needed to expend countless origin source of all things to refine it. Now, the life power contained in that formation was exceptionally powerful. It seemed not to be refined from the power of all things, but rather, it originated from a cultivator's body. This surprised him greatly. At first, he didn't believe Frelesa's words, but now he understood a bit. Within the Great Formation, there was also a presence, and the power of that presence was similar to his own, both at the Tribulation Realm, and it did not seem weak. Wanna chat? Zhuangzhong retracted the aura around him and looked at Frelesa with a hint of a smile. Frelesa felt a twinge of joy. It seemed he had succeeded. Of course, they could chat. As long as he could stall the other party, once Fuego regained his strength, he would surely slaughter the opponent. However, before he could answer, the sky began to darken, and a massive vortex began to form. Both of them were momentarily stunned by this scene. Frelesa was well prepared. He knew that Xunling would definitely be unable to resist entering. However, he didn't expect it to happen so coincidentally. Just as he had dealt with Zhuangzhong, the other party arrived. Zhuangzhong, on the other hand, was a bit puzzled by all of this. The vortex slowly formed, and the power within it leaked out, every strand enough to make even the Universe Master fall. This was also why this place was one way. Even a powerhouse at the level of the fifth tribulation realm couldn't break through. In the beginning, only Qixin could freely open this place. Others were unable to do so. The three divine masters were powerless to destroy this location. Exhale. In the depths of the vortex, faint figures appeared. Jian Wushuang was familiar with the person leading them. Indeed, it was Jinling. Although his appearance hadn't changed, his body underwent a drastic transformation. That was not all. Behind Jinling, dozens of peculiar beings, each terrifyingly grotesque. Jinling had descended. This put Jian Wushuang in an awkward position. Jinling glared with small eyes, sweeping a glance that spoke volumes. Jian Wushuang had completely betrayed them. One person, however, surprised him. Zhuangzhong. And you are? Zhuangzhong was equally astonished. He didn't know the other's lineage, but he could sense a familiar aura, that of Qixin, emitting from the person. Feeling this aura, Zhuangzhong quickly retreated. The intimidating force of Qixin was too overwhelming for Zhuangzhong, a transcendent being who had passed through the first tribulation. Not to mention Qixin, even the universe master who had overcome the first three calamities would shudder in his presence. No! Zhuangzhong quickly realized. Although he felt the similarity between Jinling's aura and Qixin's, it was weaker, barely stronger than his own, if at all. He almost fell for Jinling's bluff. Why are you here? Jinling didn't pay attention to Frelesa beside him. Instead, he questioned why Zhuangzhong had appeared in this place. Apart from Frelesa, some other transcendent beings were suppressed in the purgatory, becoming a part of the Qixin temple. How did Zhuangzhong suddenly appear here? Jinling suddenly turned to look at Frelesa. Frelesa knew what the other was thinking but remained unresponsive. This turn of events made the situation somewhat perplexing. Zhuangzhong's appearance disrupted the plans of the two. Originally, Jinling's descent was to either kill or detain Frelesa and Fuego. Jinling just wanted peace. In 100,000 years, they would find a way to leave this place. However, Zhuangzhong's appearance completely threw the situation into chaos. Regardless of which side one stood on, there was now a certainty of victory. If he helped Frelesa, then Jinling's avatar would definitely lose. There was no possibility of winning. Even if they couldn't defeat Jinling now, they could at least delay it. For Jian Wushuang at this moment, it couldn't get any better. Not only could he leave, but at least he wouldn't be held accountable by Jinling afterwards. However, if Zhuangzhong betrayed them and sided with Jinling, it would be different. Not only would the grand formation be broken, but both Fuego and Frelesa would also perish. Regardless of whether Jinling killed him or not, he would be unable to leave this place. Swish! Jian Wushuang stood up directly, halting the grand formation. Fuego also stepped forward. Now, everyone except Zhuangzhong himself understood that life and death were in the hands of the other party. Jinling's expression eased, no longer pressing for answers. Instead, a smile appeared on his face as he spoke. Zhuangzhong, the strongest of the Zhuang clan, originally from the Three Kings Court? Am I right? How do you know? Who are you exactly? Zhuangzhong was wary of Jinling. Although his strength was inferior, the aura of the Qixin temple could intimidate him. Seeing this, Shunling quickly transmitted Jinling's identity and the current situation of the Qixin temple through divine communication. He feared that Zhuangzhong would be frightened by Jinling's aura. Zhuangzhong's expression changed after hearing this information, followed by wild laughter. All fear in his heart disappeared. Haha! Never did I imagine that one day I would become the leader, even the one to lead the downfall of the Qixin temple. Zhuangzhong chuckled maniacally. His strength in ancient times was that of a mere insignificant figure. Though he had reached the tribulation realm, he was nothing more than an ant compared to figures like the Qixin. To catch the eye of Qixin, one needed to at least grasp the tribulation of the universe. He was just a desolate beast newly entered into the tribulation realm, and his family's influence was quite ordinary. His ancestor was only a second tribulation expert, holding some sway in the Three Kings Court, but in the eyes of the Qixin, he amounted to nothing. Now, being able to lead the decline of the Qixin temple, how could this not drive him mad? Qixin. Zhuangzhong gritted his teeth. When the three kings fell, a divine master from the Qixin temple descended, suppressing them all and plundering them into the Qixin temple. This grudge he had never forgotten. Jinling sensed the rising hostility in the opponent's aura, and his heart sank. It seemed that this plan was going to end in a big failure. Jinling Frelesa, however, was ecstatic in his heart. As long as he killed the true body of Jinling, everything would be manageable. He simply didn't believe that Jinling would dare to summon his true self. If he really did summon his true self, he would accept it. At worst, they would be trapped together in this place. He bet that Jinling wouldn't dare to do so. The inheritors had just risen, and Jinling wouldn't give up. No one from the outside had been able to shoulder the great responsibility of the Qixin temple. Once Jinling was trapped here, the Qixin temple would face external threats and internal rebellion. The true master of the original universe, he was aware of it, and the other party was using his power to break the seal. The strength of that true master was not weak. In the beginning, the devouring Tao created 3 true masters. One of them, however, had his origin source shattered in a battle, giving rise to 5 demon lords, Shan Jun of the Demon Sound Mountain, the 10,000 demons of the Xuanwu Temple, and the blood demon at the side of Lord Yunzhong. The remaining 2 were the wind demon, controlled by a Jinling, and the heart demon, whose whereabouts were unknown. Each possessed the strength of a half-step tribulation realm. Despite splitting into 5 entities, they all retained formidable power. The strength of the true master was truly terrifying. During the peak of the original universe's suppression, that true master wielded the power of the 5th tribulation realm. However, after being injured by someone and subsequently suppressed, he now possessed the strength of only 3rd tribulation realm. Even so, this level of power posed a threat to the Qixin temple. If Jinling were in control, it would be manageable. However, without Jinling's presence and relying solely on the external defenses of the Qixin temple, it would likely be challenging to withstand the true master's assault. Therefore, Jinling dared not gamble. He did not dare to allow his true body to enter this place. Yet, without the true body present, the current avatar alone could not stop the impending threat. When Fuego regained his peak strength, there might be a way to escape from this place. Otherwise, Frelesa wouldn't dare let Fuego recklessly enter. "You fool!" Jinling angrily shouted, glaring at Zhuangzhong. "Who do you think you're? Today, I'll eliminate you first." Buzz. Without further ado, Jinling made his move. A black brilliance emanated from his body as the might of the universe treasures erupted. From the battle armor on his body to the immensely powerful 4-faced light realm in his hand, all radiated dazzling brilliance. However, this brilliance differed from the white sunlight. It was a black light. Jinling attacked directly, hitting Frelesa where it hurt the most. Zhuangzhong roared angrily, his body swelling to obscure the sky, transforming into a desolate beast. Black radiant realm, light lake. Faced with such a powerful treasure, Zhuangzhong did not retreat. Just as he had said, he was now in control of everything. A punch went straight ahead, a buzzing sound from ancient times echoing. The desolate beast, dwelling in darkness, clashed with Jinling in a fierce battle. The onlookers were boiling with excitement. This was a tribulation realm powerhouse. Jian Wushuang was equally shaken. Although Jinling dismissed the tribulation realm as worthless, the aura emanating from the opponent made him yearn for it. As a Tao Lord, in such a battle, he might not survive a single breath. A casual wave of energy could shatter him. "Go, kill them." Jinling pointed towards the people in the distant formation, saying to the special life forms behind him, "Leave none alive." The special life form experts couldn't wait any longer. Upon hearing the command from Jinling, they immediately moved. Several dozen special life forms with peak strength made the Jinling Frelesa frown. If they were ordinary Supreme Peak experts, it would be acceptable, but among them were special life form comparable to half-step tribulation realm, making the situation troublesome. The rest protect Jian Wushuang. "Leave these people to me." Fuego stepped forward at this moment. Now, things were getting complicated. He had to deal with these special life forms first. Xinling alone couldn't handle it. Boom! The special life form at the forefront had a 80,000-fold divine body. Before entering this place, Xinling had bestowed many treasures upon them, causing their strength to skyrocket. An 80,000-fold divine body was already the limit for an emperor. Even crossing into the tribulation realm, it was difficult for the divine body to reach 80,000-fold. The opponent was a special life form, born with a perfect divine body. Similar to Qishui, even at his weakest, he possessed a 10,000-fold divine body. Now, having grown to this extent, it was quite normal. However, for cultivators to reach an 80,000-fold divine body, it was a bit challenging. Even for a special divine body, it was difficult to achieve. Boom! A massive palm imprint descended, and Xinling transformed into a golden dragon, roaring into the sky. The most powerful among those special lifeforms engaged in a fierce battle with Xinling Forlesa. Tisk enjoyable. Not bad for a tribulation realm expert. The other special life forms watched with envy, but none joined the fray. Instead, they charged towards Fuego. Among these special life forms, the first three unleashed their power, revealing 78,000-fold divine bodies. We'll handle this one. The rest of you, break the formation. Although these bloodthirsty and combative special life forms weren't particularly bright, they weren't fools either. They understood the situation. Before entering this place, Xinling had already given instructions. Only one person would have the authority on the battlefield, and everyone had to follow their commands. Yes! Among the remaining dozens of special life forms, the weakest had divine bodies exceeding 60,000-fold, while one had a 74,000-fold divine body. Facing these special existences, those standing within the formation felt a sense of hopelessness. No! The elder of the Maluo nation, draped in a black robe, was in despair. The robe fluttered as an overwhelming aura erupted. Jian Wushuang quickly retreated. Although this formation converted life power, it still had some defensive capabilities. For the moment, the special life forms couldn't break through it. What do we do? Jian Wushuang felt anxious. This situation was beyond his capabilities. There was simply no solution. Using force directly was absolutely not an option. Jian Wushuang stared at the three-sided battlefield, realizing that it might soon become a four-sided conflict. The battle between Xinling and Zhuangzhong was the most intense, both being complete tribulation realm experts, emitting the most captivating auras. Next was the battle that Xinling and Fuego were fighting together. They originally thought that by teaming up, they could stop all the special life forms. However, they found that the three strongest among them were evenly matched with Xinling. For a while, it was impossible to discern the outcome. However, with the means of Xinling, there should be a contingency plan. As for Fuego, who was once a fifth tribulation's realm powerhouse, there was no need to dwell on it. His sheer strength matched that of special life forms, but in terms of combat experience and skill, he far surpassed his opponent. In the long run, they still had a good chance of winning. However, Jian Wushuang feared that the two of them were too slow. If the great formation broke, they would both perish here. The last battlefield was this grand formation. Among the emperors who came from the four great secret realms, the strongest were only ordinary supreme peak beings. Even the elder from the Maluo nation, who burst forth with extraordinary strength, was utterly unable to stop them. As for the supreme peak beings from the shadow sect, they were even more useless. A random special life form outside the formation could annihilate them. Everyone, the formation can't hold for much longer. We must switch formations. A voice rang out, and looking in that direction, it was Shadow One, the strongest member of the shadow sect. Jian Wushuang frowned and said coldly, "Switch formations? Do you think this is your home, and you can change things as you please?" This formation was not simple. He had participated in its arrangement and understood its difficulty. "I have a way." Shadow One's figure changed, and a burst of golden light erupted from him. A puppet. Jian Wushuang squinted and found that the opponent had actually turned into a puppet. This surprised him. It seemed there was still a trump card. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and directly took out the token used to manipulate the formation, tossing it towards Shadow One. The puppet body was not a living being and could integrate into the grand formation. It could even sacrifice itself to become a formation spirit, altering the grand formation. If they turned this formation into the main defensive formation, with the power of these people, they could firmly hold their ground. Although these individuals were not particularly strong, there were also several Supreme Peak beings and hundreds of Tier 6 Emperor-level existences, making it easy to defend. Upon receiving the formation token, Shadow One's expression brightened. He then began sacrificing himself, preparing to inject his consciousness into the formation token. On a distant battlefield, Xinling was most concerned about the formation, fearing most that Jian Wushuang would fall first. Always keeping an eye on the rear, they had now figured out the opponent's lineage. Mere brutes with 80,000-fold divine bodies posed no threat to them. Xinling sensed something amiss. The formation was changing. Immediately, he directly transmitted their voice to Jian Wushuang, inquiring about the sudden change. Upon hearing about the puppet incarnation of Shadow One, the entire demeanor of Xinling changed. "Stop him!" Xinling Frelesa, unable to explain in time, roared. Then his aura surged again. The golden scales instantly transformed into a riot of colors, erupting with the power of the tribulation realm. The individual with the 80,000-fold divine body, a distinctive figure, sneered, attempting to stop Xinling. However, a burst of flame directly engulfed him, and the divine body began to shatter. This move, Xinling had used it before, trading injury for injury. Seeing Xinling desperately fighting in the distance, Jian Wushuang was also stunned. It was the elder of the Maluo clan at his side who reacted quickly and understood the situation. "Shadow One is a spy. Eliminate him." Boom! 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 In a critical moment, the Maluo clan elder directly burned his origin source and divine body, instantly erupting with several times the combat power and charging straight in. With clasped hands, a single impact, they directly thrust both hands into the chest of Shadow One. Then, with a ferocious roar, their entire aura surged again. In an explosion, they directly tore apart the puppet incarnation of Shadow One. Too late! Swish! Shadow One's consciousness had already completely entered the formation token. The grand formation began to change. Jian Wushuang's face turned ashen. He knew that this time it was over. Shadow One was not a contingency plan for Xinling but a contingency plan for Xinling. He should have thought of this. Xinling was trapped in this place, and only consciousness could descend into the four great origin sources, devoid of any substantial power. How could one possibly refine a puppet? In an instant, the grand formation ceased its operation, and the once robust life power, along with the power of all things, erupted into fragments. The immensely rotating grand formation abruptly halted, some of its components directly turning into powder. The inherently violent power of all things now released a scorching aura. "Go!" Jian Wushuang reacted swiftly, and the wings of the beast god on his back trembled violently as his figure disappeared instantly. Simultaneously, the grand formation erupted with intense light and shadow. Boom! A force capable of shattering everything burst forth. Even though Jian Wushuang had escaped quite far, his physical body was shattered by a flame, and his divine body began to crumble as the origin source rapidly depleted. Fortunately, he now wielded the power of life, constantly restoring himself. Time after time, annihilation. Time after time, recovery. His strength continued to rise. Don't forget, he mastered the extreme Tao, which had a bonus. Every near-death experience would trigger potential beyond limits, causing his strength to surge again. If dealing with ordinary supreme peaks, it might still be useful. But now, he faced those special life forms. Although he escaped from the grand formation, Jian Wushuang still had no solution. Shadow One forcibly stopped the grand formation, burying almost all emperors with it. Xinling, who fought against Zhuangzhong, showed a pleased expression. This was his trump card, unexpectedly playing such a crucial role, which was beyond his expectations. As for the fallen shadow one, he was just a puppet, and he had already proven to be worth the cost. There was nothing to lament. Even cultivators were insignificant. It was enough that they could disrupt Xinling's schemes. Only a few escaped from the large array, and among them, besides Jian Wushuang, was the Maluo Nation elder. But now his aura was very weak. Jian Wushuang hurriedly rushed over. The Maluo elder was a loyal servant of Xinling, someone reliable. He had to help him recover his strength. Otherwise, who would protect him? Swish! Jian Wushuang went directly to the elder's side, placing a hand on his shoulder, then infused a powerful life power into his body. The Maluo elder was astonished. He didn't expect the life power to be so strong. Although he knew Jian Wushuang had special abilities, he didn't anticipate it to be this formidable. In an instant, the Maluo elder's origin source and divine body were restored to the supreme peak. Even his physical body was completely healed. The Maluo elder, with a surprised expression in his eye sockets, ultimately didn't say much, just expressed gratitude. "Thank you. Don't thank me. First, stop those special life forms." Jian Wushuang's opinion of the Maluo elder changed a bit. He hadn't expected him to express gratitude. He thought the elder was just a loyal servant. Surprisingly, he still had some humanity left. After helping the Maluo elder recover, Jian Wushuang didn't linger. At the edge of the battlefield, he began assisting the few emperors who had survived against all odds. Apart from the Maluo elder, another supreme peak being survived, along with a few relatively fortunate Tier 6 emperors. Even though he knew they were not of much use, he still helped them regain their strength. Every life saved was a small victory. Since mastering the life power, he seemed to have developed a sense of compassion for all living beings. In the past, he wouldn't have bothered with these people. The only time he would extend a helping hand was when it could benefit him. Now, a Tier 6 emperor would not be of much benefit to him. Instead, it became a burden. In fact, it would be more prudent not to waste energy and take advantage of the opportunity to escape. The gaze of those special life forms was fixed on them. But fortunately, Xunling Frelesa arrived in time to ward off those creatures. Jian Wushuang tried to calm his emotions. At this moment, neither escaping nor confronting was an option. If martial skills were ineffective, he had to switch to the literary path. The powerful figures on the field were accurately divided into 3 factions. Zhuangzhong represented one side, while Xinling and the special life forms formed another. The remaining faction consisted of Xinling Frelesa and Fuego. These two were considered as one. In terms of strength, it was equivalent to 3 experts in the Tribulation realm. The current situation was at a stalemate. If the Grand Formation was still intact, their side might have a chance of winning. However, without the Grand Formation, as long as they made a move against him, Xinling and Fuego would be cautious. With the current shift in the situation, Jian Wushuang became crucial. If he continued to hesitate foolishly, Xinling might attack him. He needed a turning point, or a set of convincing arguments. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and first sent a message to Xinling, "Lord Xinling." Then, he communicated once again with Xinling. In his heart, he had a plan. However, it depended on whether Xinling was willing. If so, the situation could be instantly reversed, and even the internal threats could be completely resolved, ensuring his survival. As for Zhuangzhong, he was nothing more than a desolate beast. Besides having some leverage in this critical situation, he was worthless. The confrontation between Xinling and Zhuangzhong was evenly matched. Both parties had noticed the change in the situation, and there was already a 50% certainty in their hearts, albeit just that. Now it was time to make a move. First and foremost, eliminating Jian Wushuang was crucial. As long as Jian Wushuang was killed, everything would fall into place. Though it might not completely eradicate all future troubles, at least it could by several epochs. By the time powerful beings from the inheritor category emerged, he wouldn't have to worry about it. Jian Wushuang. Xinling was somewhat surprised. The other party dared to communicate with him. Wasn't he afraid that he might follow the karmic chain and directly obliterate him? Lord Xinling, the current situation is disadvantageous for both sides. Even if I fall, with Fuego's recovery speed alone, he will eventually reach his peak again. By then, Qixin Temple will face a great calamity. However, Jian Wushuang spoke persuasively. Zhenling, however, disdainfully said, Jian Wushuang, no matter what, today you shall fall. Don't blame me for it. Although he had initially arranged for Jian Wushuang to act as bait, circumstances now forced him to eliminate Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang's plea for mercy, it only made him more contemptuous. As a formidable being, how could one beg for mercy on the battlefield? Jian Wushuang continued to communicate through sound transmission. Lord Zhenling, don't you want to eliminate future troubles permanently? Tisk, are you trying to deceive me with this nonsense? Zhenling sneered. This place is the first prison, and no one can break free from it. Then why did you come here? Jian Wushuang directly countered. If this place was truly formidable, why would Zhenling bother coming here? Wasn't he just afraid that Zhenling might have some means? Fuego belonged to the giant god clan, a powerful being of the fifth tribulation realm. Even if this place had no tricks, Zhenling probably couldn't rest easy with Fuego here. Zhenling's expression darkened. With a backward punch, he forcefully repelled Zhuangzhong and transmitted his voice. What do you want to say? The giant god clan is not as simple as you think. Jian Wushuang directly aimed at the vital points and continued, Lord Zhenling, they are the overlords of the starry sky. We don't have deep enmity with them. Why must we suppress them? He had conversed with Zhenling and knew that they had no grudges against the Qixin Temple. Since there were no grudges, why not let them go? Forcing things this way was not good for anyone. Of course, it was least friendly to him. Upon careful thought, from the trial until now, whenever he had a connection with Zhenling, he almost fell. The last time he was taken away by Junwang, and this time by Zhenling. Both times, he stood against the Qixin Temple. He didn't want it this way, but unfortunately, he was just a pawn. Moreover, for the Qixin Temple, suppressing the powerful figures of the giant god clan, weren't they afraid of inviting disaster? When the three kings suppressed Zhenling for Lesa, they attracted Fuego. Wasn't Zhenling afraid of attracting even stronger calamity? Now that the Qixin Temple had fallen, without the Qixin, whether the first prison was still unidirectional was uncertain. After all, if Zhenling could teleport them here, there might be a way out. Perhaps this method required Fuego to recover his peak strength or the assistance of a fifth tribulation realm powerhouse. Anything was possible. Since that was the case, why not let them go? Zhenling heard his persuasion but was momentarily stunned. However, deep down he didn't think so. Zhenling revealed numerous secrets to Jian Wushuang, yet some crucial reasons were still omitted. Perhaps even Zhenling was unaware of why Qixin insisted on suppressing him. Zhenling, however, understood the underlying reasons. This was closely tied to the destruction of the Moro timespace. There was a significant connection between its demise and the giant god clan. What if they were released seeking revenge? Zhenling pondered more than Jian Wushuang did. In the present, Qixin Temple reigned supreme in this river of time because it was a recently formed one. Just a casually released peak-level figure could dominate here. However, in timelines more formidable than the Moro timespace, there were realms stronger than Qixin. Qixin Temple was like a mobile treasure trove, insignificant before such powerful beings. Even with numerous contingencies, Qixin Temple's original purpose was to nurture inheritors. If targeted by formidable beings, not only would it fail in nurturing inheritors, but it could also be trapped. Jian Wushuang, you're thinking too simplistically. Zhenling once again attacked, forcefully smashing the bell. His aura surged, attempting to break free. Jian Wushuang's expression changed, but he persevered. This was his only way out, and he couldn't afford to give up. Zhenling's killing intent was unmistakably palpable. If this continued, Jian Wushuang would be done for. Lord Zhenling, what if they're willing to make a life oath? Hearing the mention of a life oath, Zhenling paused. This time, Jian Wushuang didn't convey through sound transmission, and both Zhenling and Fuego heard it. A life oath. That was a significant matter that could affect their future transcendence. No one would rashly make such an oath. Fuego turned to Zhenling for Lesa, asking, will you agree? Xinling remained silent, contemplating. He neither agreed nor refuted. A life oath could indeed have profound implications depending on the conditions. If they swore not to retaliate against Qixin Temple, only seeking freedom, it would be ideal. Yet, Xinling lacked the ability to release them, so Xinling never entertained such thoughts. Now things were different. As long as Xinling agreed not to interfere with them, he could swear that he wouldn't harm Qixin Temple after leaving. It was a profitable deal, so he didn't refute. When Xinling heard this, he was also momentarily stunned. He understood the importance of a life oath better than Jian Wushuang. In the past, there was no room for turning back between the two sides, so there was no thought of easing the situation. It was a fight to the death. But now it was different. Everyone sat together. Seeing an opportunity, Jian Wushuang continued, "Lord Xinling, as long as you swear not to interfere with their plans, they can also swear not to do anything harmful to Qixin Temple. A win-win situation." Fuego was originally cautious, but after understanding, he couldn't help but applaud. If it could be resolved this way, there was no need for a fight. After reaching his peak again, Xinling Forlesa had a way to take him out. As for retaliating against Qixin Temple, he had indeed considered it. The moment he left this place, he would notify the superpowers within the clan to come. Qixin Temple was a combination of the power of the temporal river. It contained countless treasures, a legacy of a half-step 8th Tribulation Realm powerhouse. Even the experts at the 7th Tribulation's realm coveted it. Of course, he was not willing to let it go. Judging from the current situation, as long as he could get out, everything else could be abandoned. Forlesa looked at Fuego and nodded. Both parties tacitly agreed. Now it was just a matter of Xinling nodding. Jian Wushuang was also tense. He wasn't afraid that Xinling would gamble. The bet was on the emergence of a super-existence among the inheritors in the future. Even if Fuego could escape from the first prison by then, he would still be within the Qixin Temple. At that time, he could still be slain. Xinling was also afraid. What if there was no appearance of a 6th Tribulation Realm or several powerful beings at the 5th Tribulation Realm? Relying solely on his ability to mobilize the origin source, dealing with Fuego was still too risky. Fuego's peak strength reached a half-step 6th Tribulation Realm. Even with Xinling mobilizing the origin source, they were not evenly matched. They could only rely on favorable terrain to deal with him. It was too risky. Jian Wushuang, this time you've achieved great merit again. Eventually, Xinling gave up the risk and chose to negotiate. Upon hearing this, Zhuangzhong was dumbfounded. No more fighting? Negotiation? What should he do then? Forlesa, are you trying to trick me? Zhuangzhong was irritated. After enduring so much, finally becoming the protagonist, and now the two sides weren't fighting. Then what use was he? Maybe both sides would join forces and eliminate him first. Zhuangzhong quickly retreated, his brows furrowed. Xinling turned to the other side, saying coldly, "Zhuangzhong, if you beg for mercy now, I can spare your life and take you out." A Tribulation Realm cultivator, and a complete one at that, had potential for further growth. He could be a useful ally, provided he pledged allegiance and made an oath. If so, Xinling could spare his life. More importantly, he wanted to know how this guy escaped from purgatory. This was crucial because some of the Tribulation Realm beings imprisoned in purgatory were not even his match. Errors were absolutely not allowed. Moreover, purgatory was the core operation of the Qixin Temple, second only to the origin source. There, any mistake was not allowed. Zhuangzhong gritted his teeth, angrily staring at Forlesa. Although impulsive, he wasn't foolish. Forlesa abandoned him, and he could no longer turn to Xinling, letting others manipulate him. Xinling Forlesa ignored Zhuangzhong and spoke to Xinling. "Let's make an oath first. Zhuangzhong's matter can wait." He feared that Zhuangzhong, having just allied with Xinling, would be manipulated against them. While this might be overthinking, it was crucial for ensuring they could leave this place without any problems. "No problem. But let's agree on the content of the oath beforehand." Xinling didn't care. He was more concerned about the oath. The two sides formally negotiated and began discussing the oath. Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. This crisis was finally averted. If they hadn't reached an agreement and had to continue fighting, he would have to hide in the skysite heavenly chessboard just to survive. However, being perpetually trapped here was no different from perishing. Powerful beings were supposed to roam the starry sky, traverse every universe and timeline. Being bound was indeed no different from falling. Might as well let the other party have a quick victory. The special life forms stood aside, somewhat bored. They chatted in whispers. Is it over now? The special life form with an 80,000-fold divine body clearly hadn't had enough and felt regretful. I thought it would be more exciting, but it is what it is. Jian Wushuang, not far away, heard the words and sneered inwardly. In the battle so far, neither side had played many trump cards. Sending a clone was a preparation. After all, there was no certainty. Just letting a puppet arranged in the shadow sect take action wasn't much. If it weren't for his carelessness, the other party wouldn't have stood a chance. Xunling Forlesa had prepared countless epics in advance. There wouldn't be fewer tricks up his sleeve than a Xunling, but it didn't make much difference. If they truly unleashed everything, these special life forms probably wouldn't survive long. Being able to stand here and talk now was already quite good. Moreover, all these special life forms that came in were their true selves. Whether they could leave was still a question. Surprisingly, they were even considering whether they wanted to continue fighting just for fun. The two sides negotiated for a full hour, finally completing the oaths. No problem, right? My request isn't unreasonable. Xunling pinched the flesh of his mouth, looking at Forlesa. Forlesa, on the other hand, frowned and said coldly, not being able to appear in the same time and space as the Qixin Temple simultaneously, isn't that a bit too much? Over these years, he also understood that the ambitions of the Qixin Temple were significant. They not only wanted to nurture inheritors but might also venture into more powerful timelines for battles. If they happened to encounter each other, should he really have to hide? Don't forget he was Xunling of the Giant God Clan, and he, too, needed to battle across timelines. Did that mean giving up when encountering the Qixin Temple? Humph, with so many timelines, do you have to be enemies with the Qixin Temple? Xunling glared with his small eyes and angrily exclaimed. Xunling Forlesa was not weak either. For this point, they tangled for another hour. Jian Wushuang couldn't bear watching from the side. Couldn't they compromise a bit, each taking a step back? After all this entanglement, they finally compromised, able to exist in the same time and space. However, Forlesa couldn't threaten the influence range of the Qixin Temple, not even stepping into it. Forlesa was somewhat satisfied with this outcome because neither side could step into the other's influence, which was beneficial for him too. All right, since there's no problem, let's swear according to the oath above. Wait! Forlesa stopped the Xunling. Xunling was a bit impatient. Are you done? We're missing a witness. Forlesa spoke up. A witness? Actually, it was optional, but for the sake of formality, finding one was better. Xunling's eyes flickered, turning to look at Jian Wushuang. Xunling also did the same. The two stared at Jian Wushuang, making him feel uneasy. Sworn party Forlesa. Jian Wushuang stood solemnly between the two individuals, holding a jade slip in his hands. Above it were the words of the oath. He had thought that a couple of sentences would be enough, but unexpectedly, thousands of vows were listed, intricately connected. Even he hadn't anticipated it would be so troublesome. Though he felt a bit embarrassed, both Xunling Forlesa and Xunling were very serious. Upon hearing their names, they responded promptly. Forlesa took a step forward and declared loudly, "Present." Sworn party, Xunling. Xunling also stepped forward, his voice resolute. "Present. Do you two agree?" Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. It was his turn to speak, and it took the time of burning an incense stick before he finished. Xunling Forlesa and Xunling both revealed a hint of pride on their faces. After all, they were the ones who set these vows. "I agree." Both of them answered simultaneously. Jian Wushuang cleared his throat and continued, Let's begin then. Yes. Eye of the giant god clan, Fralesa. Eye of the Qixin temple. The first true spirit, Zhenling. A long string of oaths took a good half-hour to complete. At the moment of the successful oath, an invisible force descended from the starry sky and instantly merged into the origin sources of the two. If Fralesa violated the oath, he would perish in the tribulation. As Zhenling wasn't a cultivator, he pressed down on the origin sea of the Qixin with the oath. If he violated it, the origin source sea would collapse. Without the origin source sea, the Qixin temple would be nothing but an empty shell. This risk was not one that Zhenling dared to take. Phew! Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, everything was completed. Jian Wushuang, you've done well this time. Once that being from the origin source of all things departs, the origin source will be yours. Zhenling expressed satisfaction. In truth, the origin source of all things should have belonged to Jian Wushuang from the start. And this time, things fell into place effortlessly. Jian Wushuang was excited about this outcome. Not only did he manage to save his life this time, but he also gained control of the origin source of all things, making it all the better. Immediately, he respectfully bowed in gratitude, saying, "Thank you, Lord Zhenling. All right, it's time to quickly recover my strength and leave this place as soon as possible." Fuego, who had remained silent throughout, couldn't help but speak up now, reminding everyone. Zhenling raised a hand slightly, signaling the special life forms to step back. Once again, a large array rose in this location. Originally prepared as a contingency, the array now proved Zhenling's thorough preparations, anticipating unforeseen events. Jian Wushuang and Fuego stepped into the array simultaneously, with Zhenling following suit. This time, let's first restore my injuries. Fralesa still felt a bit uneasy about the situation. Worried about unexpected changes, his origin source recovery speed was relatively fast, taking only 10 years. By then, he would have complete Tribulation Realm strength, providing him with confidence even in the face of unexpected events. Fuego paid no attention to this concern, sitting cross-legged in the center of the array. Relying on his inherent recovery ability, he began restoring his own origin source. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang assisted Zhenling Fralesa in repairing his origin source. As for Zhenling's avatar, it watched from a distance. Since it was just an avatar, there was no harm in staying here. It engaged in casual conversation with Zhuangzhong, inquiring about the situation in purgatory. Zhuangzhong lowered his head, feeling a bit dejected. Contrary to his former vigor, he spoke in a subdued tone. Indeed, purgatory is in trouble. Several Tribulation Realm experts have already fallen. Zhenling's expression changed dramatically. He was completely unaware. Though unable to directly enter the purgatory, he could sense the calamity within it. The familiar auras were clearly present, so how could they have perished? It's devouring. Zhuangzhong's face shifted, fear evident in his eyes. Upon hearing the word devour, Zhenling was also startled. However, he quickly understood and inquired, "Is it that true master?" "It's Gu Jun." Zhuangzhong's tone held a hint of sorrow. He had nearly perished in the purgatory. The opponent's strength was terrifying, but luckily, he was just a minor figure within the purgatory. Master Gu Jun didn't pay him any attention, but instead slaughtered those universe masters, devouring their origin sources. Even though those universe masters had fallen, their origin sources were swallowed by Gu Jun, so their auras remained. Hence, Zhenling didn't notice. Gu Jun. Zhenling's complexion changed drastically upon hearing the name. Of the three true masters, one had fallen and transformed into one of the 5 demon lords. The other two, initially thought to be unknown to the Qixin temple, turned out to be the source of calamity. Perhaps it was the kindness of the original entity that didn't want to release havoc upon the starry sky. One of them was suppressed. Zhenling closed his eyes slightly, and his main consciousness returned to his true form within the Sea of Origin Source. Seated in the Sea Observation Pavilion, Zhenling began deducing. Simultaneously, he continued to devour some fragments of memories belonging to Qixin. Zhenling's true form and his avatar simultaneously opened their eyes. In their minds appeared extensive images, revealing the conspiracy of the three true masters. The first prison. The clone of Zhenling had icy eyes as he stared at Zhuangzhong, questioning, "How powerful is Gujun?" Having learned about the conspiracy of those true masters, or rather, the trace of evil thoughts from Qixin Temple transmitted to the devouring origin source, making the other party always remember. All of this was ultimately the root cause left by Qixin. Although purgatory was strong, it was a space-time treasure with limited power. In case it was broken by the other party, Qixin Temple would truly be in danger. As formidable as the divine master Huang, Zhuangzhong replied. Zhenling felt a chill in his heart. The strength of divine master Huang was at the pinnacle of the sixth tribulation realm, ranking among the top 3 in the Moro spacetime. The only one who could stably suppress divine master Huang was Qixin. Among the remaining 3 powerful beings in the sixth tribulation realm, one was a newly promoted sixth tribulation realm. Among the other 2, one did not belong to Qixin Temple. Zhenling didn't know much about them, but the strength of Huang was vaguely the strongest among the 3 major divine masters. Gu Jun being comparable to Huang was quite different from the memories he obtained. The 3 true masters back then were not that strong. How did they become so powerful now? Fortunately, one of them had fallen. Now, one was suppressed in the original universe, and the other was in purgatory. Both were like stones on Qixin Temple's head. Retribution. This was a calamity for Qixin Temple. There was no escaping. Just as they had recently resolved the internal troubles of the giant god clan, a larger hidden danger emerged. Gu Jun, that lunatic, was not easy to deal with. If he really came out, he might overturn Qixin Temple. Zhenling felt a wave of fear, but fortunately, he had foreknowledge and could prepare in advance. "You mean, a crack appeared during the battle, and following that crack, you arrived here?" Zhenling found it hard to believe. Purgatory was a temporal treasure. How could there be a spatial crack on a temporal treasure? Zhuangzhong nodded, affirming, "Absolutely true. It was a spatial crack that appeared right in front of me. I was the only one who escaped through it. I don't know why I ended up here afterward. This is troublesome. In case the spatial rift reappears, Gu Jun can arrive here at any time. However, there were several conflicts before, and no spatial anomalies occurred. It was strange when I escaped that time. The battle wasn't the most intense. Gu Jun killed 2 experts at the 4th Tribulation's realm, and the rift suddenly appeared." Zhuangzhong was also puzzled. When Gu Jun appeared and fought with several experts at the 5th Tribulation's realm, no rift appeared. Instead, when he killed experts at the 4th Tribulation's realm, a spatial rift emerged. Perhaps this had nothing to do with the battles. It's likely there was an issue with purgatory. Zhenling also thought of this possibility. If indeed there was a problem with purgatory, things would be serious. Fortunately, Gu Jun's devouring speed was not very fast. He had only devoured several experts at the 3rd Tribulation's and 4th Tribulation's realms and was still digesting his gains. He had plenty of time left. Gu Jun was a manifestation of the devouring origin source. The more powerful individuals he devoured, the stronger he became. Now he could rival Huang, indicating that he had reached the pinnacle of the 6th Tribulation realm. If he devoured all the Tribulation realm experts in purgatory, he might even reach the half-step 7th Tribulation's realm. By then, emerging through the rift again, Qixin Temple would be in real trouble. The 5th Tribulation realm could still be suppressed, but dealing with the 6th Tribulation realm would require setting up numerous contingencies. Facing a half-step 7th Tribulation realm expert, the consequences were unimaginable. The pressure instantly descended upon Zhenling. Damn it! Why did I have to leave behind so much trouble back then? Zhenling was deeply regretful. In the beginning, Qixin should have just slaughtered all these people. Now he was left to deal with a mess. As a true Sprit, he couldn't leave. Within the Qixin Temple, there were forces at the pinnacle of the 5th Tribulation realm. Dealing with those at the 6th Tribulation realm required mobilizing the origin source C. As for those at the half-step 7th Tribulation realm, he had no way at all. He could only hope for the might of purgatory. Even without anyone manipulating the temporal treasure, suppressing someone at the half-step seventh tribulation realm should not be difficult. Zhenling comforted himself, then inquired about various situations inside purgatory before slowly closing his eyes. The cultivation of the inheritors had to be accelerated. They couldn't afford to procrastinate any longer. In recent years, several ultimate emperors had emerged. Once these youngsters reached Tier 6 Emperor stage, there wouldn't be much suitable training within the four great secret realms. It was necessary to send these promising ultimate emperors to other powerful dimensions for training. The space-time river where the original universe was located had fewer powerful beings than the experts within the four great secret realms. Naturally, that wasn't enough, so they had to be sent to other formidable dimensions. While the clone observed the recovery of figures like Fuego and others in this location, the true body started lecturing on Grave God Mountain. Simultaneously, he continued arranging various trials to refine those ultimate Tao Lords. Only a sufficient number of ultimate emperors could he hope to get one at the Tribulation Realm. Under his guidance, Shang was on the verge of a breakthrough. As one succeeded, there would be more, and with this experience they could continuously cultivate Tribulation Realm experts. Ultimate emperors who became Tribulation Realm experts became more formidable than ordinary Origin Source Tao emperors breaking through. As long as a practitioner followed the ultimate Tao, becoming a Tribulation Realm allowed rapid advancement to a third Tribulation Realm powerhouse. Controlling a universe afterward, their cultivation speed would skyrocket, allowing them to swiftly ascend to become a fifth Tribulation Realm powerhouse. This was the advantage of the ultimate Tao, becoming more evident from Tao Lords and Emperors to later Tribulation Realms. Hence, Zhenling spared no expense to cultivate those ultimate Tao Lords. As for ordinary Origin Path Emperors, they were treated like cultivating foliage, just like raising fish. Only a few emperors with unique origin sources would receive special attention. 1,000,000 years were but a drop in the river of time, evaporating in an instant. Since the opening of the Qixin Temple, millions of years had passed. Now, the participants were counted in cosmic units. Originally confined to the original universe where the Qixin Temple resided, and a few surrounding universes where participants were plundered, the scope had expanded to the entire river of time. The Qixin Temple's influence was even greater than they had imagined. On the Grave God Mountain and even the Elder Palace, numerous tasks were being issued, all of them being plunder missions. Led by Tier 6 Emperors, they plundered one universe after another. As long as they were Yen Immortals, none were spared. They were seized upon sight, and the requirements for Tao Lords were extremely strict. Sometimes, almost 90% of a universe's Yen Immortals were taken, yet the number taken by Grand Yen Immortals and Tao Lords was just a fraction. Most Yen Immortals were undeveloped, with an uncertain future. Grand Yen Immortals and Tao Lords were generally well established. Even though the Qixin Temple was rich and powerful, they wouldn't waste time on some waste individuals. In the midst of the bustling activity outside, the Qixin Temple experienced intense internal competition. Batch after batch of formidable individuals emerged, quickly surpassing the once proud Tier 5 emperors. Among the inheritors who were contemporaries with Jian Wushuang, some powerful Tao Lords stood out, such as Tao Lord Jiuyu from the Tongtian Buddhist realm. Before entering the Qixin Temple, he was already ranked in the top 500 of the entire universe. After the trial and entering the Grave God Mountain, he reached the peak, comparable to experts like Wan Xing who practiced myriad Taos. After successfully integrating the Tao and advancing to Emperor within 1,000,000 years, he cultivated to become a Tier 5 Emperor. Despite occasional time acceleration during this period, perhaps equating to millions of years of cultivation, he was considered a top-tier inheritor at the time. However, now, despite reaching the peak of Tier 5, he was surpassed by Tier 6 emperors among the subsequent inheritors. This led to even more fervent competition among the earlier inheritors, who were more desperate than those who came later. While Tier 5 emperors were still exploring the four great secret realms, Tier 6 emperors had almost all left the Qixin Temple and ventured into the River of Time. A small portion went to the earthly realm. The disappearance of Xinling brought tranquility to the earthly realm, but the slaughter by Broly, the powerful transformation Tao expert, never ceased. Now a supreme peak existence, he continued the search for his father's murderer. In the external world, a drastic transformation occurred over 1,000,000 years. As for Jian Wushuang's initial betrayal, it had long been forgotten, rarely mentioned except by those closely related to him. In the human realm, on the ruins ravaged by lightning, under the giant willow tree destroyed by the elements, Hu Qing sat cross-legged, wearing a pristine white robe despite the surrounding dust. He did not leave the Qishan temple with the mainstream trend but instead spent 1,000,000 years meditating on this ruined site. When he opened his eyes again, galaxies converged in the pupils, forming a starry rotation. Master! Standing on the lightning-split tree, Jiang Shang was surprised to see her master open his eyes. She thought he would cultivate here for millions of years, never expecting him to emerge so soon. Over these years, Jiang Shang had traveled through the 4 great secret realms with Hu Qing, even visiting the Grave God Mountain. She witnessed much and realized the immense potential within her. After 1,000,000 years of cultivation, she became a Tier 6 emperor, fully aware that all of this was related to the spirit of grass and wood within her. Her origin source was the true spirit formed from the transformation of plants and trees. Having perused numerous scrolls, she had never heard of anyone whose origin source could generate spiritual awareness. This secret was known only to her and her master, and it had never been disclosed to outsiders. Hu Qing slowly rose, looked up at the girl on the willow tree, revealed a faint smile and spoke, "We should leave." "All right." Jiang Shang nodded in agreement, also feeling joyful. In this ruins, she was truly bored. Jiang Shang jumped down from the willow tree, but when she touched the ground, there was a ripple in her origin source. It was a tremor of the origin source. Jiang Shang's expression instantly turned cold, and her state of mind shattered. "It's okay. I'm here." Hu Qing placed a hand on Jiang Shang's shoulder, helping her stabilize her state of mind. Her eyes filled with wisdom. He stopped practicing not because they needed to leave, but because someone had arrived. Moreover, it seemed to be someone familiar. In the depths of the ruins, within the black mist, a figure slowly approached, towering and imposing, with a terrifying aura emanating from the green battle armor on their body. The mist on the ruins rose, accompanied by a destructive roar. However, the green-armored figure, without any haste, casually tore apart a beast in the ruins comparable to a Tier 5 emperor. He then walked towards Hu Qing and Jiang Shang. The oppressive feeling made Jiang Shang's gaze contract, and the spirit of grass and wood within her body was also horrified. Hu Qing looked up, not showing any surprise, but rather remained calm. Staring at the figure in green armor, he said indifferently, "Why bother, after following for so long?" Crack. The green-armored figure stopped, crushing the brown skeletal remains on the ground, making a crunching sound. "I had no intention, but the origin source has a will. Hu Qing, I have high hopes for you. I hope you can understand." The figure in the green armor spoke, and the black mist receded, revealing his appearance. The newcomer was none other than the Lord of the Azure Dragon Temple, the most powerful Supreme Peak expert in the Qishan Temple aside from the Jinling. His strength was terrifying, far beyond the simplicity of a half-step Tribulation realm. He was a super powerhouse capable of matching those in the Tribulation realm, slightly weaker than the former Emperor Jueyun. If he were to challenge the Beiwang Tower, he could easily pass at least 80 floors, surpassing even those divine generals. Such a character had been secretly following Hu Qing. What was even more terrifying was that Hu Qing was aware of it. As he approached, Jiang Shang dared not meet the gaze of the master of the Azure Dragon Temple. Her eyes constantly darting around, she retreating behind Hu Qing. She had seen Long Yi before, in the capital of Great Xia, but at that time, Long Yi's target was not them, so there wasn't much pressure. Now, facing him directly, she felt the true terror he possessed. Hu Qing remained calm, saying, "Since the Lord has no intention, why bother making things difficult for my disciple? Do you really want to protect her?" Long Yi furrowed his brows slightly. Since Hu Qing could detect him, he understood that he had not come for her but for Jiang Shang. The spirit of grass and wood within Jiang Shang's body was the biggest hidden danger in the forest of eternal secrets and had to be eliminated. Zhenling had no hesitation about this. As long as the opponent's strength exceeded his bottom line, he would immediately take action. Compared to other threats, the spirit of grass and wood was more terrifying. As the saying goes, two tigers cannot share one mountain. Qixin Temple had only one true spirit, and that was Zhenling. There couldn't be a second one. The origin source true spirit could devour and take over each other. And this was the reason why Zhenling wanted to kill Xianxia. So, he directly dispatched Long Yi to secretly keep an eye on her. Unfortunately, Hu Qing had always kept Xianxia by his side and never gave Long Yi a chance to make a move. Now, Xianxia's strength had reached the level of a Tier 6 emperor, and the origin source true spirit had advanced to the supreme peak level. Zhenling couldn't tolerate it any longer, and with the pressure from Gu Jun, there was no room for mercy. Even if he felt resentful towards Hu Qing, Xianxia had to be eliminated. Long Yi remained silent this time, sighing inwardly. He understood the specific reasons, having observed for so many years. However, as one of the 4 great temple masters, his existence was originally for the purpose of cultivating inheritors. Now, he found it somewhat difficult to lay hands on one. After all, Hu Qing had not betrayed the Qixin Temple like Jian Wushuang. Instead, he had diligently cultivated and felt gratitude towards the temple. His personality, mindset, and potential were all strong, making him a candidate for the 3 divine masters in the future. Among the current inheritors, many had received the inheritance of the 3 divine masters, but very few could ultimately inherit it. However, Hu Qing possessed both the potential and the strength. Such a super inheritor, a future powerhouse, was now heading towards confrontation. It was truly a pity. Buzz. Long Yi's aura surged, emitting an unmatched presence. He still hoped to make Hu Qing back down, but stopping him was simply impossible. Knowing Hu Qing's character, he still had to do it, showing how highly he valued Hu Qing. Not only the Azure Dragon Temple, but even the White Tiger Temple and Vermilion Bird Temple held high regard for Hu Qing. They provided full support in terms of resources, and Zhenling went all out to open the 3 Kings legacy for Hu Qing, enabling him to successfully integrate with the Tao. Let's begin. A radiant light shone at the center of Hu Qing's eyebrows, determination evident in his eyes. He couldn't abandon his disciple. He also had a heart to protect, something he had learned from his master. In the midst of the great Desault wilderness battle, facing an army of billions of skeletons, the 9 revolutions Grand Yen Immortal, and those who guarded him did not retreat, bravely sacrificing themselves. Now it was his turn, and how could he retreat? How could he even imagine retreating? If he were to retreat, it would be a violation of his own Tao heart, and he would never be able to reach the pinnacle in his lifetime. To protect everything he held dear, he was willing to fight. Mentor, I won't disgrace you. With robes fluttering. In the mire, a white-robed monk's aura shook the heavens, dispersing enemies for miles around. Long Yi's hands raised in defense, shock in his heart. Just a breath and it could force him to retreat. How is this possible? To be able to force him back? How strong was Hu Qing's power? Yet he clearly felt that Hu Qing was only peak-level Tier 6 emperor. How could he become so powerful? You actually hid your strength. Long Yi's pupils contracted, staring at Hu Qing in disbelief. Hu Qing clasped his hands together, his expression stern, lacking the kindness and gentleness of the past. Virtuous. This dignified demeanor was the true state of being at ease. Long Yi soared into the air, his aura skyrocketing once again, a joyful expression on his face, saying, "It seems there's going to be a big battle." Originally expecting to crush the opponent, he didn't expect that Hu Qing had also hidden his strength. He had to take this seriously. At this moment, he was also excited. He hadn't expected Hu Qing's potential to become so strong. In just a few years, he had reached the supreme peak level. Please. Hu Qing raised his hand, making a gesture of invitation. But this time, neither of them was polite. They directly engaged in close combat. 2 immense auras clashed violently, causing Xianxia to retreat to a distant spot, her complexion turning pale. Although neither of them explicitly mentioned it, she had some suspicions. It was likely that Long Yi's arrival was somehow connected to her. She had heard of Long Yi's formidable strength and was deeply concerned for her master. Hu Qing, being her only living relative, was someone she would not allow to depart from her side, especially after the loss of her brother. The small hands clenched tightly, nails piercing the palms, and a blood-red moon flowed through the fingers, dripping onto the ruins. Above the ruins, the battle between the two was intense. As Long Yi fought on, his strength grew, and his aura continuously rose, while Hu Qing's breath weakened. Even at the supreme peak level, it was challenging to contend with a powerhouse like Long Yi, especially when it came to combat experience where he clearly dominated. In a moment of distraction, countless fist shadows descended. A gleam appeared at the center of Hu Qing's eyebrows, and his figure disappeared instantly, evading the attack. Before he could catch his breath, a lingering figure emerged behind him, Long Yi. Bang! A heavy kick ruthlessly landed on Hu Qing's back. With a muffled sound, this blow shattered Hu Qing's physical body, tearing apart his divine body as well. Hu Qing's body crashed heavily into the ruins, causing the entire structure to sink. Xianxia, witnessing this, was filled with intense anger. However, her strength was insufficient. Even if she joined the fight, she would likely not withstand a single round and only serve as a distraction to her master. She could only watch helplessly. Unbeknownst to her, her aura was steadily rising, undergoing a boundless leap without limits. Soon, it reached the edge of the supreme peak. In the deep pit of the ruins, Hu Qing's white robe shattered, and he slowly stood up from the wreckage. There were traces of blood at the corners of his mouth, but the visible injuries on his body began to heal. Rip, casually tearing off the tattered robe, revealing a set of black silk garments that matched Hu Qing perfectly. His physical body was torn, but the black silk garments showed no signs of damage. The force unleashed by Long Yi just now was sufficient to destroy ordinary eternal treasures. Yet this attire remained intact, evidently far from ordinary. This is a peak eternal treasure. Puff! Hu Qing turned and spat out blood from his mouth, slightly moved his body, looked up at Long Yi in the sky, his expression calm. The recent battle was just a warm-up. Long Yi raised an eyebrow, not surprised by Hu Qing's strength this time, but rather found the opponent to be very calm. Hu Qing, aren't you afraid? Staring at Hu Qing, Long Yi was puzzled. The opponent didn't use full strength, and he wasn't hiding it. After all, he was an inheritor, and he didn't want to directly crush Hu Qing. If he really used his full power, Hu Qing might have fallen just now. Inside the Qixin temple, apart from Jinling and the other 3 temple masters, no one could withstand him for a round. That's how confident he was. As for the other 3 temple masters, it wasn't because the opponents were strong, but they were all the same puppet bodies that were hard to kill in the Tribulation Realm. Unless a 3rd Tribulation Realm expert with mastery over the universe appeared, they could directly defeat them. Their defensive abilities were even stronger than Emperor Jueyun back then. Hu Qing couldn't stop him. He just didn't want to harm Hu Qing, preferably resolving it peacefully and handing over that young girl. Although he was a puppet, he also understood the human heart. Hu Qing soared into the air, facing Long Yi, his voice resounding. What my masters taught me is, if you want to protect, don't be afraid. His masters didn't fear death to protect him, and all of them perished. Jian Wushuang was the same, desperately protecting him. Escaping from the army of corpses and facing death, they all stood in front of him. Now, when it was his turn to protect, how could he possibly retreat? Long Yi sighed, shook his head, and then his gaze also changed a bit. He spoke, "Then don't blame me." This time he wouldn't hold back. He would directly inflict severe injuries on Hu Qing and then take Xianxia away. No choice, everything was for the greater good. Threatening Jinling meant threatening the entire Qixin temple, and he had to act. If it were for other reasons, he would be willing to plead, even against Jinling's will. Imperial weapon of the dragon, Long Yi angrily shouted, and his towering figure began to tremble. Crack! Behind him, the green armor cracked, revealing sharp thorns, and a dragon tail swayed up from behind, transforming directly into a dragon-human state. At this moment, Long Yi's strength surpassed that of a divine general, but it was only half of his full power. Nevertheless, it was enough to deal with Hu Qing. Currently, Hu Qing's strength, at best, could rival Wuxia. Being able to compete with Wuxia right after entering the Supreme Peak was already quite formidable. A terrifying aura erupted, directly shaking Hu Qing thousands of miles away. Under the shimmering beams of light, Hu Qing, who barely withstood the shockwaves, also unleashed his full power. The mark on his forehead flashed, and his strength reached its peak. Samsara. Long Yi employed peak secret techniques, while Hu Qing also unleashed his newly elevated Samsara Supreme technique at the level of universal secrets. For a moment, the auras of the two were extremely fierce. However, in the eyes of outsiders, there was still a vast difference in strength. Long Yi's strength surpassed Hu Qing's by a whole level. This battle held no suspense. Boom! A powerful aura tore through the space of the mortal realm. Through the space, Long Yi unilaterally suppressed Hu Qing. This was a dual suppression of both realm and power. Hu Qing reached the Supreme Peak because he had transcended the boundary of universal secrets, the realm of space, and even the black hole, but he had not reached the level of the universe. He suffered a major setback as soon as they clashed. The aura suppressed by Long Yi began to decline. Fortunately, the Samsara Supreme technique, the core technique of one of the three great divine masters, the Samsara Sacred Lord, had now been improved by Hu Qing to the level of universal secrets, barely managing to withstand Long Yi's first blow. Bang! Bang! Sounds of explosive qi resonated, and Xianxia, far away, could only hear the sounds but couldn't see the figures of the two. At this point, even Xianxia, whose aura had risen to the Supreme Peak, couldn't observe the two fighting. In terms of spatial realm, there was still a significant gap. Swoosh! Two figures appeared simultaneously the next moment, but after a brief clash, they vanished once again. Xianxia could only sense that Master Hu Qing's aura was steadily weakening with each passing moment, while Long Yi, who wielded the imperial guest of the dragon, grew stronger with each battle. Huff! Huff! Hu Qing gasped for breath, and after enduring another punch, his physical body began to shatter. This time it truly shattered, without even the strength to regenerate. He had reached the point of burning his origin source. If he didn't burn it now, the next time Long Yi struck, he might be struck into the desolation of his origin source. Burning the divine body. Hu Qing's pupils burst open as he forcefully ignited his divine body. Starting from the basic 50,000-fold divine body, it kept climbing. 58,000, 60,000, 65,000-fold. Ah! 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 Hu Qing erupted completely at this moment, roaring to the sky. Who would have thought that the once gentle and mild-mannered Hu Qing would have such a crazy day? Boom! The forcibly burned divine body instantly transformed into strength. An explosive 70,000 times the divine body, Hu Qing resembled a heavenly god, holding a staff in one hand and a fist in the other. His expression was ferocious, biting down hard on his teeth. Blood flowed down from his mouth, and he had entered a state of madness. Long Yi's eyelids trembled. In the next moment, he waved his right hand, and behind him, a blood-colored cloak instantly appeared. A spear that had intimidated billions of years descended and appeared in his hand. It wasn't cruelty but a display of utmost respect. It was also because he didn't want to witness Hu Qing's life and death struggle. He aimed to swiftly resolve the battle. As long as he subdued Hu Qing, he could directly take Xianxia away. The dragon-sealing spear, the peerless divine weapon dominating the Qishan temple. "I'm pleased you can witness it," said Long Yi, a slight smile playing on his lips. Countless epochs had passed without him truly making a move. At this moment, his strength soared to 70%. Hu Qing remained silent, standing firmly by Long Yi's side without a hint of wavering. Above the ruins, under a gloomy sky, two super-powerful beings clashed. The aura in this place had long shaken the entire human secret realm. Although the human secret realm had the least presence among the four great secret realms, there were still several Supreme Peak experts present. At this moment, they all stood on the edge of the ruins, observing the ultimate battle in this corner of the world. Even though they couldn't engage in the fight directly, simply feeling the two powerful auras made them exhilarated. The indigenous Supreme Peak experts were eager, but none dared to approach. At that level of combat, they didn't have the qualifications to watch up close. Sect Master, do you know the identity of the other party? A Supreme Peak expert, holding a folding fan, looked towards a middle-aged man with a white crown. Curiosity welled up within them. Where did these powerful beings come from? The strongest among the four great secret realms was the God's Tomb, and the human realm was the closest to it. They had descended into it before and encountered many powerful and special life forms, but none gave them the same feeling as the two powerful beings deep within the ruins. The middle-aged man, known as the Sect Master, was the leader of the most powerful force in the human realm, Sealgate Mountain. He was also one of the oldest Supreme Peak beings in the human realm, with high status and extensive knowledge. The Sect Master shook his head. This time, he truly didn't know the background of the other party. The auras of those two were peculiar, most likely inheritors rather than experts from the four great secret realms. He had been fortunate enough to encounter such a formidable aura once before. It was when that powerful being, who broke through the tribulation, descended. The aura had made the entire human secret realm tremble. After that, the mysterious powerful being had never appeared again. Take a good look. Savor the taste of a battle at this level. It might be the most intense showdown we witness in this lifetime. The master of the sealed gate gaze was intense. Although only two auras were discernible in the battle, with the combatants nearly invisible, being able to sense those two forces constantly colliding was enough. A group of people stood outside the ruins, silently watching. Inside the ruins, a storm had already formed. The center of the storm was Hu Qing and Long Yi. After the divine body, the strength surged, but Long Yi's strength also rose to 70%, still very challenging. Adding the power of the burning divine body's transformation, it was unstable, and now the divine body had begun to fall apart. In addition to the divine body, there was the origin source. In a desperate struggle, Hu Qing, without hesitation, burned even the origin source, causing a change in Long Yi's expression. No matter how much the divine body burned, even if it damaged the foundation, it could be repaired, but the origin source was different. Once a defect occurred, it could not be restored. Even Jian Wushuang, with the life power, could not repair the origin source of the indigenous emperor. Long Yi, who valued talents, couldn't bear to see Hu Qing cut off the path of the strong. He immediately erupted, unleashing all his strength. With a sweep of the dragon-sealing spear, he directly split Hu Qing, who was burning the divine body, in half. Then, with a clenched fist, he roared, "Seal! Buzz!" Hu Qing, who was ready to fight desperately, suddenly felt his entire being become light, and his consciousness blurred. Felt like he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Hu Qing couldn't withstand the terror of Long Yi's methods. Swish! The figures of the two appeared. Long Yi was intact as ever, only his aura stronger, possessing complete combat power, making the entire realm quiver. As for Hu Qing, he was left with a shattered body, the divine body completely shattered, leaving nothing behind. The origin source, however, remained relatively intact. But his own consciousness had already fallen into a deep sleep, a consequence of being severely injured. Once the origin source dropped to 30%, it would automatically enter a state of slumber. Hiding beneath the willow tree, Xianxia noticed the absence of her master's aura. Her eyes turned crimson, and despite the expected sorrow and despair, not a single tear fell. She stood there quietly, staring at the two floating body fragments in the air. Gently clenching her fist, a green light emanated from her body. If Jian Wushuang saw this, he would undoubtedly be astonished. The power of life. At that moment, an immense life power surged within Xianxia. Inside her origin source, the spirit of grass and wood weakly raised its paw and said, "Master, I'm so tired. With all its strength, the spirit of grass and wood elevated Xianxia's origin source to its peak. Within Xianxia's origin source space, countless black holes emerged. Surprisingly, not a single star existed. These black holes incessantly consumed and evolved, eventually forming a complete and remarkably real space. Using its own life power, the spirit of grass and wood assisted Xianxia in mastering the universe's space directly. Presently, Xianxia had ascended to the supreme peak. Moreover, she achieved this pinnacle realm by ascending in the realm of the universe's space. Her strength surpassed even the supreme peak who created the universe's secret techniques. Especially her origin source, which was exceptionally unique, inheriting the spirit of grass and wood's origin source. That power of life originated from the spirit of grass and wood. Innate life. Release him. Xianxia's voice was icy as she slightly lowered her head, rising in front of Long Yi. The power of life directly infused into Hu Qing's body. His originally damaged physical form began to heal. However, this power of life was incomplete and couldn't cure the origin source. Thus, Hu Qing remained in a state of unconsciousness. Although Long Yi was surprised by this, it was strange that the other party possessed the power of life. Keeping his hand from Hu Qing was due to their relationship, but facing Xianxia, Long Yi wouldn't hold back anything. For some reason, the opponent's strength had suddenly surged, but it didn't matter. At this moment, Xianxia was only on par with Hu Qing, or even slightly inferior. For Long Yi, it was nothing. Little girl. Long Yi's words were cut off the next moment. A burst of explosive force instantly pierced through his chest. Looking down, it turned out to be Xianxia. With just a finger, she directly pierced through the green battle armor, and a bloody hole appeared in his chest. Long Yi hadn't even reacted, and his breath was already weakening. That blow just now actually injured him, not just the physical injury, but it also affected his origin source. What? Long Yi retreated, pointing at Xianxia in astonishment. How is this possible? Xianxia's expression was ice-cold, not giving Long Yi a chance to catch his breath. She attacked again, and the red long sleeves behind her fluttered as she charged towards Long Yi. At this moment, she herself didn't know that, unconsciously, she had already acquired the combat power of the Tribulation realm. But she was still just a newly ascended supreme peak. It was the power of the spirit of grass and wood that unleashed her life force, propelling her to the supreme peak she had now attained. Surprisingly, she could now harm Long Yi and even dominate him. Long Yi's defense was terrifying. It was a challenge for even a Tribulation realm expert to inflict harm upon him. Never did he expect to be wounded today, and by a young girl at that who managed to subdue him. Clad in red long sleeves, she enveloped Long Yi, rendering him immobile. Xianxia raised her hand once again, pointing her finger. Space shattered, and the skeletal remains on the ruins began to rise. The heavens and earth lost their color. Long Yi, bound tightly, roared, "Imperial guest of the dragon." This was a universe's secret technique specially crafted for him by Qixin. It was by no means simple. Boom! The red sleeves restraining him instantly burst, and Long Yi broke free from the constraints. After breaking free, Long Yi's face showed some embarrassment, and he said resignedly, No wonder Lord Jinling wanted to suppress you." Now he understood. Completely and thoroughly understood. Long Yi didn't look at Xianxia but rather at the lingering figure behind her. A towering ancient tree stood behind Xianxia. No wonder Xianxia's strength was so formidable. She had an ally. Long Yi recognized that willow tree. That was the divine willow of the forest of eternal secrets. It was a true universe master. The divine willow was originally an ordinary willow tree within the Moro spacetime. It was later enlightened by the Qixin temple because an important person to the Qixin had been buried beneath this willow tree. With the assistance of the Qixin, that ordinary willow tree transformed into a spirit, creating the forest of eternal secrets. Eventually, it gained control over a universe and became the universe master. After the fall of the Qixin, the forest of eternal secrets was moved to the Qixin temple. Later, the consciousness of the divine willow appeared within the forest, and this consciousness was somewhat different from the known divine willow. After this consciousness appeared, it revived some of the spirits of grass and wood within the forest. This was something Jinling couldn't tolerate, so a group of powerful beings was sent to clear and slaughter the forest of eternal secrets. In the end, the divine willow appeared, and Jinling must take action. That led to a shocking battle. Unexpectedly, the divine willow was still alive. Long Yi immediately conveyed this news to Jinling. This matter was of great significance and beyond his capabilities. In the sea of origin source, Jinling opened his eyes and muttered, "Humph! I knew you weren't dead yet." On the chessboard, another move was made, this time landing on the first prison. Fuego had reached the peak. Now, he and Frelesa were preparing to leave the first prison through a formation. The scene finally froze on Jian Wushuang. Jinling revealed a smile. Then, a message was transmitted to Long Yi. "Come back. You don't need to worry about this matter." Long Yi was a bit puzzled upon hearing this, but it was beyond his desire to handle such matters, so he retracted his aura without hesitation. Glancing at Hu Qing, he initially thought of taking him away to help him recover her origin. However, considering Jiang Shang's watchful eyes and her assistance from the divine willow, he realized he didn't have the strength to take Hu Qing away. "Little girl, although I don't know why you've received the divine willow's help, I advise you to sever ties with it. Otherwise, Hu Qing will never have peace." After leaving these words, Long Yi tore through space and instantly left. Jiang Shang naturally had no mood to chase the other party. She merely stored that sentence in her heart. "Master will never have peace." Phew! Che cautiously turned around, gazing at the towering ancient tree behind her. Akin to a celestial phenomenon. She was momentarily stunned. In the next moment, the giant tree collapsed, causing Jiang Shang's entire being to shake. Subsequently, a violent backlash ensued, and her body weakened to the extreme, plummeting from the Supreme Peak realm back to the Tier 6 Emperor. The Force just now did not belong to her, but the cosmic space remained intact. As long as she recovered, she would still be a Supreme Peak powerhouse. Master Hu Qing was still unconscious, but without much thought, Jiang Shang left the ruins with her comatose master. For a while, the ruins once again fell into silence, and the black mist gradually descended. Within the black mist, if one looked closely, a wooden boat could be seen slowly drifting. On the boat stood an old man with a conical hat, holding a dim lamp in his hand. The dim lamp resembled the spirit guardian's lamp in the god's tomb, but the disparity in their strength was immense. "Life!" The old man on the wooden boat murmured softly, his face withered. With just a low murmur, the boat disappeared. No one was aware of what had happened. Even Jinling in the Origin Source Sea was oblivious. As for Jiang Shang, she was now just an ordinary Tier 6 Emperor, unaware of any anomaly. All traces of life within the ruins vanished, and the Supreme Peak beings from the mortal realm descended, one after another. Gone. It seems the appearance of the third powerful figure broke the deadlock. What a pity. These people clearly hadn't had their fill. After a short stay, they dispersed. The human realm fell into tranquility once again. Swish, swish, swish. Just as the human realm had calmed down, another group of powerful beings appeared, even stronger than the previous ones. However, they concealed their auras, shrouded by a beam of light, and no one noticed their presence. Finally, we're out. We've been waiting for this day, for countless epochs. Appearing at this location were Shenling Frelesa and others, accompanied by Jian Wushuang, the avatar of Jinling, and the formidable realm-crossing expert, Zhuangzhong. Fuego didn't have much to say. When he was suppressed, he only retained consciousness and didn't feel much. Shenling, on the other hand, was different. Trapped in the first prison for countless epochs, finally breathing the air of the human realm for the first time, at this moment whatever sacrifices they had made before were all worth it. Even the air felt exceptionally sweet. Unfortunately, beneath them was a ruin. If they walked eastward, they would see a forest where the air was even more refreshing. Zhenling, somewhat impatient, urged, "All right, the aura of the original universe is even more refreshing. Let's go quickly." Saying so, he opened a cosmic passage. Following the passage, they would reach the original universe. Entering the universe, tearing through space at will, they could enter the river of time and space. At that moment, they would truly be free. "What about Phimisa? Don't forget about him," Fuego reminded from the side. At this moment, another crack appeared in space. A Taoist in a yellow robe, holding a giant egg in his hands, walked out of the crack. The newcomer was Wuxia. "Now everyone is here," Zhenling quipped on the side. Frelesa couldn't be bothered to talk to Zhenling. Gesturing for Fuego to take over, he turned to Jian Wushuang. This smooth release from confinement was all thanks to Jian Wushuang. Not only did he help the two of them recover, but he also mediated between Frelesa and Zhenling, facilitating their reconciliation. Even if they couldn't take Jian Wushuang away, they had to form a deep connection. Jian Wushuang's potential was not inferior to the giant god clans. In the future, he would undoubtedly reach the realm-crossing stage and become a universe master. There would be opportunities to meet again in the external world. This time, thanks to Brother Wushuang, Frelesa's declaration of brotherhood brought their relationship with Jian Wushuang to the forefront. Jian Wushuang felt a bit awkward about the address, but knowing that the other party would soon leave, he couldn't help feeling a sense of relief. His current status was partly due to Zhenling Frelesa and the other half to Wuxia. What a combination of pitfalls and jinx. Jian Wushuang didn't take Zhenling's attentiveness seriously, nor did he dare to. With Zhenling by his side, he couldn't be too enthusiastic or too humble. Since the other party wanted to treat him as an equal, he responded with a casual cough, saying, "It's nothing." Simple and straightforward was best, and Zhenling was pleased with it. "This is not a trivial matter. I owe you a favor privately. In the future, if you encounter any difficulties, don't hesitate to find me. You can use this token. Whenever you face a strong member of my giant god clan, just show this token, and there will be no danger." The words sounded domineering, but even Zhenling didn't doubt the exaggeration. The giant god clan indeed had such strength. Jian Wushuang also understood this and was momentarily tempted. However, there was a clear intention in the other's words to belittle the Qixin temple. He hesitated for a moment on whether to accept or not. "Since it's given, just take it." Zhenling, seeing Jian Wushuang's dilemma, spoke decisively, helping him out. Only then did Jian Wushuang dare to accept the token and express his gratitude to Zhenling with a respectful bow. With this, the matter had come to a complete conclusion. The strongest hand shrouded in the four great secret realms was about to exit the history of the Qixin temple. Unfortunate Frelesa, stern Fuego, and the yet-to-hatch Phimisa walked into the passage. The three powerful beings of the giant god clan entered the corridor. Frelesa glanced back and then entered the passage directly. Since his birth, most of his time had been spent in the Qixin temple, making it his first home. Jian Wushuang watched their backs, feeling a complete relief deep in his heart. Zhenling, on the other hand, was quite relaxed. Finally, these people were sent away. In the future, the four great secret realms would return to calmness, becoming the exclusive garden of the inheritors. As for greater troubles, they were in the purgatory. He had no choice but to take it step by step. Splash! After Zhenling closed the passage, he turned to look at the few people left by Frelesa. Besides Jian Wushuang, there was the elder of the Maluo nation and several emperors. They weren't much of a threat, but since they were dead soldiers, there was no need to keep them. With a wave, the emperors turned into powder. The body of the Maluo elder shook. He wasn't a dead soldier. He had long known that this day would come. Without resistance, he closed his eyes. "Wait!" Jian Wushuang stood up with a stiff expression and said, "Lord Zhenling, he is not a dead soldier. Can you spare him and let him go to the mines to make up for his great mistake?" Seeing this, Wuxia quickly spoke up, "Lord Zhenling, this time we have won a great victory. Let my subordinates handle these petty thieves and troublemakers." Although the elder Maluonation felt no fear, deep down, he wanted to stay alive. At this moment, he felt gratitude towards Jian Wushuang and Wu Zhuo. Zhenling cast a sidelong glance at Wu Zhuo, and with just one look, he silenced Wu Zhuo, who stepped aside. However, being only a supreme peak being, since the request was made, there was no need to add more slaughter. Among the inheritors now, whether it was Hu Qing, whom he had favored before, or Jian Wushuang, whom he had underestimated, he had offended each one of them. Jian Wushuang was relatively easy. A few treasures could pacify him, and there was still some utility in keeping him around. But Hu Qing was different, a stubborn one. He had invested so much in nurturing him, only to produce a troublemaker, having someone by his side that even ghosts were unaware of. When it came to Xianxia, Zhenling wouldn't hesitate. This threat surpassed even the giant god clan. Facing the giant god clan, there was a chance of a direct confrontation, but the origin source true spirit within Xianxia was of the same kind as him. What if one day that true spirit decided to take over? However, now he was alert. Well then, spare his life. As for the mine, there's no need to go there. In the future, just follow Jian Wushuang and be a guardian. The incident from last time must not happen again. Zhenling spoke with a sense of regret, as if lamenting the near loss of a valuable asset. Wu Zhuo listened with surprise, becoming more certain in his heart that Jian Wushuang would undoubtedly become the future controller of the Qixin Temple. Otherwise, Zhenling wouldn't have gone to such lengths to rescue him. He silently decided to hold on to Jian Wushuang, this future noble. He thought all of this was thanks to Zhenling. If he knew that, in the first prison, Zhenling had almost personally executed Jian Wushuang, he didn't know what he would think. Jian Wushuang, who knew everything, didn't share the same thoughts. He wouldn't trust Zhenling's words again, even if he were beaten to death. Oh, by the way, escort all these special life forms to the Demon Sound Mountain and give them to Ma'in. Zhenling suddenly remembered there was still a group of troublesome people to deal with, dozens of special life forms with the power of the Supreme Peak behind them. Originally, they had planned to leave them in the first prison, but upon discovering the situation inside the purgatory, they dared not leave these people there. What if there were more problems? As for the promises made earlier, he had no intention of fulfilling them. Zhenling pointed to the formidable figure of Zhuangzhong, a powerhouse in the tribulation realm, and said, "You go too. Keep an eye on these guys. Release them only when they are willing to wear the divine demonic restraints." Upon hearing this, the faces of those special life forms changed drastically. They couldn't even muster the courage to curse. Zhuangzhong had now become the vanguard of Zhenling. Without any complaints, he could only comply. Just being able to get out was good enough. When Wu Zhuo heard the name Zhuangzhong, he was somewhat surprised. He was familiar with the person, and since they were going in the same direction, he approached for a conversation. As a former disciple of the Qixin Temple, Zhuangzhong naturally knew Wu Zhuo, and since they shared the same master, they could be considered to get along. On the ruins. Now, there were only 3 people left: Zhenling, Jian Wushuang, and the elder of the Maluonation. Tisk, you've really achieved great things this time. You can directly go to the Elder Palace and take the origin source. You can rest assured. No one will trouble you. Zhenling said seriously. This time, Jian Wushuang chose to believe him. There was no other choice. Zhenling turned to signal the Maluo elder to step back and then carefully set up a barrier. I have one more thing here that I need to remind you about. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang approached, and as the two exchanged whispers, his expression darkened completely. Such a thing happened? Zhenling nodded with a solemn expression, sighing. I just found out myself. The cause and effect you left in the Earth realm have had a significant impact. That little girl can now seriously injure Long Yi. Long Yi isn't a match? Jian Wushuang exclaimed in disbelief. A trivial matter he hadn't paid attention to before had turned into this. From Zhenling, he learned that Xianxia, accompanied by Hu Qing, was searching for him everywhere, seeking revenge and blood. Unable to bear watching, Long Yi personally tried to mediate, only to be seriously injured and forced to retreat by Xianxia. This was bad. Jian Wushuang felt a bit frightened. If it were a Tier 6 emperor, he wouldn't be afraid, but someone who could seriously injure Long Yi, who was at the supreme peak level, that person must be incredibly strong. He was simply no match. At the same time, he was surprised. This matter was a disaster for him, but for Jinling it seemed like a trivial matter among juniors. Why be so cautious? This made him somewhat suspicious, and he stared at Jinling with a gaze of disbelief. Jinling, hands behind his back, cleared his throat, straightened up, and continued. I won't hide it from you. Xianxia went to the forest of eternal secrets to seek revenge on you. She consumed a forbidden fruit, causing her strength to skyrocket. Due to Hu Qing, I couldn't intervene, so I need your help. However, all of this is because of you, and you must take responsibility to the end. I take responsibility? Jian Wushuang's head spun. Just because of Hu Qing's situation, Jinling couldn't act, and now he was supposed to help? Even if he did step in, he wasn't a match. Isn't this sending him to his death? Don't you know, Lord Jinling, that Hu Qing is my sworn life and death brother? Jian Wushuang didn't want to take on this responsibility and turned his head aside, resolute and unwavering. He and Hu Qing were true brothers who had faced countless trials together. How could he harm his brother? Jinling continued to persuade from the side. I'm not asking you to deal with Hu Qing, just to eliminate Xianxia. Lord, please don't play games with me. I'm not her match. Going there would be suicide. Jian Wushuang was also overwhelmed. Jinling quickly waved his hand and reassured. No. She is currently seriously injured, with her strength reduced to around the level of a Tier 6 emperor. Moreover, Hu Qing is still in slumber. This is a great opportunity. Then I'm not going either. Jian Wushuang had already decided that there was no good in it and directly refused Jinling's splash. A stream of light appeared in Jinling's hand, startling Jian Wushuang. He thought Jinling, in his madness, was about to make a move against him. Jinling's face looked particularly sinister under the illumination of the light, especially his two bean-sized eyeballs. It's fine if you don't go. It's just that this top-tier treasure for Dao Merge, I will give to someone else. Also, I want to remind you, I won't intervene in battles between the younger generation. If you kill Emperor Xitian, I won't say anything. But when Xianxia regains her strength and seeks revenge on you, I won't interfere. Jinling almost wrote the word threat on his face. There's no logic in giving a candy first and then using a stick. Jian Wushuang grabbed the crystal ball in the light, holding it without saying a word. A strand of thought power probed in. Indeed, there were some treasures and experiences needed for Dao Merge. However, compared to the inheritance of the inheritors during the Dao Merge in the Three Kings Court with Hu Qing, it was far less. The two were like the difference between valuable and worthless scrap metal. But having something was better than nothing. He was on the verge of Dao Merge, and for him this was a timely help. Of course, this bit of benefit was not enough. Jian Wushuang nonchalantly stored the crystal ball into his mustard seed. In reality, his gains this time were not small. Excluding this crystal ball, his beast god weapon had already recovered, and with the unique improvements of the giant god clan, it had now reached the complete form of the beast god origin source. That drop of beast god essence blood also played a crucial role. He also obtained some information about the outside world from Jinling, which was invaluable. However, all these were given by Jinling. Jinling wanted to dismiss him with just a broken crystal ball, but it wasn't that easy. As for the origin source of all things, it was originally his, so it couldn't be considered a granted reward. Thus, he began contemplating some needed treasures, preparing to extort Jinling. However, after much thought, the things he could ask for were too few. His divine body didn't need improvement anymore. With the origin source of all things, the spatial realm could break through the black hole realm. Finally, all that remained was the state of mind, which couldn't be enhanced by external objects. After resolving the increasingly expanding karmic calamity, he should be able to break through smoothly. With nothing much to desire for himself, he decided to bring up an external matter. He had once inquired of Jinling whether Bai Junwang had truly fallen. He learned from Jinling that Bai Junwang's demise was only a clone, and his true self had perished in ancient times. Interestingly, the original by Junwang had fallen in the Qishan temple during ancient times and could be revived using the origin source C. However, reviving the ancient by Junwang meant that the other party wouldn't recognize him at all. Sighing, Jian Wushuang had initially considered reviving Nie Yuan. From Nie Yuan's origin source, he had grasped the true essence of the ultimate sword Dao. The sword Dao, followed from insignificance to the present, was about to embrace its perfection. His sentiments toward the sword were profound, and he felt grateful to those who had helped him attain enlightenment. He was willing to pay some price to revive Nie Yuan, even if it meant exploiting the opportunity to blackmail Jinling. Unfortunately, when Nie Yuan summoned the power from the starry sky, he returned to the starry sky, making revival impossible. It's feasible to go there, but, Lord Jinling, I have two small requests. I wonder if... Jian Wushuang's expression was solemn as he stared at Jinling, his tone serious. Jinling was startled, thinking Jian Wushuang was about to make exorbitant demands. He hastily retreated, awkwardly saying, Jian Wushuang, you know I'm just a true spirit. Despite my apparent authority, it's all a facade. If you're after treasures, you should ask Zhuyi. She has plenty. I'll tell you everything if you just say. Frightened, Jinling spilled a bunch of Zhuyi's secrets, advising Jian Wushuang to extort treasures from her. Jian Wushuang was quite speechless. If he were to make such a request, he feared that the Vermilion Bird Temple Master would slaughter him. Moreover, his two requests were not for treasures. My lord, you've misunderstood. I don't seek treasures, only the resurrection of a person. Jian Wushuang expressed his plea. Jinling, upon hearing this, breathed a sigh of relief and waved his hand casually, saying, Tell me, how many people do you want? This matter is too simple. When he revived the emperor before, he resurrected them in batches. For the origin source C, it posed no burden at all. If it were someone else, he might have created some difficulties. But now, since Jian Wushuang was asking, he broke the precedent. Just one. Jian Wushuang extended a finger, his gaze resolute. Since entering the Qishan temple, he hadn't made many friends. The only ones he truly fought alongside were Hu Qing and, although Bai Junwang had initially harbored ill intentions towards him, through gradual interaction, they became both mentor and friend, with Bai Junwang imparting many valuable lessons to him. Bai Junwang. Jinling furrowed his brow and asked, Why resurrect him? Jinling sensed slightly and only found the true body of the ancient Bai Junwang. Even if resurrected, he wouldn't recognize Jian Wushuang. I promised him to give another chance to ascend the peak. Now, let's consider it understanding karma. Jian Wushuang replied vaguely. Their original vow was based on this promise, but unfortunately, Frelace's manipulation led to Bai Junwang becoming a meal for Fuego's resurrection. It was all fate. Now, he had the opportunity to resurrect the original Bai Junwang, a favor even if the latter didn't remember him. Well, since you insist, I can help you achieve that. What's the next one? Jinling rubbed his beard. For him, these matters were not difficult. They were things he could accomplish with a mere wave of his hand. The second request was even simpler. Gong Miaoyi, another pitiful character, probably still in the Elder Palace's prison at this moment. Release Gong Miaoyi, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Despite her betrayals, he owed her freedom for Nie Yuan's sake. If given the chance, he would cast her out of Qishan Temple, giving her a world of her own. No problem, Jinling assured. In truth, this matter wasn't much of a request. Jian Wushuang could have freed Gong Miaoyi himself. However, with Jinling's intervention, it resolved some unnecessary troubles, especially considering Gong Miaoyi's collusion with Xinling Frelace in the past. Jinling patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder and said, I'll be waiting for your good news. Thank you for not disappointing me, Jian Wushuang said, though joy eluded him. Some matters demanded resolution sooner or later. If his strength had been overwhelming, there would have been no need to concern himself. However, considering the opponent's current level of growth, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to eliminate Xianxia. Blame it on the rapid advancement of the other's strength. Hu Qing, Arcs of lightning flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. After all, it was Hu Qing's disciple who was to be killed. After Zhen Ling left, the Maluo elder flew over and bowed, saying, "I pay respects to the young master." Mo Luo was genuinely grateful to Jian Wushuang for interceding on his behalf. Now that Zhen Ling had left, he had nowhere else to go, so following Jian Wushuang was the best option. As for the Maluo nation in the Earth realm, there was no longer any attachment. "You don't need to follow me," Jian Wushuang said. Maluo, however, remained bowed, respectfully saying, "If the young master is worried, I am willing to pledge my life." Jian Wushuang shook his head. Such a pledge was unnecessary. Before he could respond, Maluo directly made the life oath. It wasn't that he doubted the other's loyalty, but his rapid ascent meant that protectors with supreme peak strength were of little use to him. With the departure of Zhen Ling, no one posed a threat to him. Moreover, Maluo was just a native supreme peak expert and knew less than Jian Wushuang, so his knowledge was indeed of limited use. "Since it's like this, then follow me for now," Jian Wushuang said as the other was so determined. Following the guidance given by Zhen Ling, Zhang Shang, accompanied by Hu Qing, had hidden in the secret realm of the Earth realm. Jian Wushuang needed to deal with that trouble first before returning to the heavenly realm. Resolving karma, heading to the Mahayana Spirit Mountain, obtaining the heart of the beast god, and then only the final step of Tao merge remained. "It's almost time." Jian Wushuang's forehead glowed like a sword, his aura changing. Wrapped in Maluo's aura, he headed directly west towards the human realm. As he approached the Tao merge, his state of mind became increasingly calm, like still water. It had been millions of years since he last visited the Qishan temple. His progress was not particularly fast. He was still just a Tao lord. Many had surpassed him in cultivation speed, such as Hu Qing, who had successfully become an emperor by achieving Tao. Among the first group of inheritors, the Tao Lord pursuing the ultimate Tao was the most numerous. Now, there are already more than 10 who have successfully integrated the Tao, but half have failed. Among the remaining Tao Lords, some lack confidence, while many still wish to perfect the ultimate Tao before merging, each with their own significant aspirations. On the Grave God Mountain, there are thousands of ultimate Tao Lords. However, very few can successfully integrate their Taos with perfection. Apart from Hu Qing, there are only 1 or 2 others who have succeeded. The path is too challenging. However, if successful, one can step into the Tier 5 Emperor, quickly advance to Tier 6, and then directly comprehend secret techniques. They can search for a universe secret technique suitable for themselves. Once they create a universe secret technique, it signifies supreme peak strength. The cultivation rhythm of emperors is faster than that of Tao lords. The tribulation realm is even faster. At least emperors have no time limit, but the tribulation realm has its tribulations, unavoidable even for emperors. The path of the strong becomes increasingly rugged. Yet, it has never been difficult for practitioners like them. Boom! A massive wave of energy dispersed the oceans, lakes, and mountains. Jian Wushuang and Maluo arrived in the western part of the Earth realm in just 3 days. After seeing the scene before them, Jian Wushuang understood why the Earth realm's secret realm had little presence among the 4 great secret realms. The western part of the Earth realm is an endless desert, occupying a quarter of the Earth realm's area. The eastern part is a vast ancient ruin, also claiming a quarter. Only 2 relatively good lands remain, and half of them are ruled by the monster race. It is challenging for human cultivators to establish themselves in the human secret realm. Resources for cultivation are also scarce. In this desert, cultivation is not a problem, but there is a severe lack of resources. Unlike the heavenly realm with its endless territories and unlimited resources, the human realm here was not as tranquil as the heavenly realm. Ancient forces were abundant, and resources were saturated enough for internal consumption, even with surplus. In contrast, the human realm was different. Not only were resources insufficient, but most of them were monopolized by powerful individuals, leaving the lower-tier cultivators in unbearable hardship. The number of Yen immortals was less than 1/10 of the Earth realm, but the population of ordinary people could rival that of the heavenly realm. This was enough to illustrate that among cultivators, a gap had emerged among the strong. With so few Yen Immortals, very few could cultivate enough resources to become grand Yen Immortals. As for emperors, it was nothing short of a fantasy. So much so that as Jian Wushuang traveled, his telepathic reach spanning millions of miles around, the number of emperors he encountered was scarce. Most of these emperors were in seclusion. He traversed through the bustling central continent of the human realm and didn't witness a single battle among emperors. This was not tranquility. It was clearly a pathological imbalance in supply and demand. Each emperor monopolized resources, cultivating in isolation, completely indifferent to the lives of external cultivators. Sects were pitifully scarce. Moreover, sects had extremely high admission standards, only accepting descendants of emperor families. These major forces even monopolized ordinary sects, leaving no space for independent cultivators to survive. Seeing Jian Wushuang's confusion, Maluo explained, "Young master, that's how the human realm is. I once visited a great sage of the human realm, whose strength was not inferior to mine. He once said that if resources weren't controlled, there would be even fewer strong individuals in the human realm. It's better to concentrate these resources in the hands of a group of people, so that when invaded by other realms, these strong individuals can protect the human realm." The Earth realm fundamentally looked down upon such barren human realm secret realms. These words were all deceitful to those wandering cultivators, to the extent that the power and influence of human realm families skyrocketed over the years, while the wandering cultivators were the ones rising at every turn. "This is interesting." Jian Wushuang nodded, not in agreement with the other party, but feeling that the person was shameless. Concentrating resources and giving them all to those big families shouldn't have been the original intention. Initially, the estimation was to concentrate resources to cultivate practitioners with better talent and potential. However, the result was the rise of family influences, monopolizing the resources released and completely cutting off the path for wandering cultivators. In the face of the Tao, everyone has a chance. Why should one give up so early? It's not good to give up on oneself too early. He had seen late-blooming powerhouses. One shouldn't resign themselves too early. Wasn't the potential of Tian weak enough? If it weren't for the beast god weapon, it would probably have been difficult to become a grand Yen Immortal. But in the end, a Tier 5 peak-level emperor, apprenticed to Tai-san, with the hope of becoming a Tier 6 emperor. Although he was not on good terms with the other party and even killed him personally, one had to admire what was worthy of admiration. Others may have the ability, but the success of the other party had little to do with potential. Luck was a factor and effort was as well. Relying solely on luck wouldn't get one very far. The world is undecided, and everyone is a future powerhouse. Jian Wushuang declared firmly, "I want to leave this statement behind." Mo Luo was momentarily stunned, then assured, "No problem. The Grand Venerable of the human realm is nothing. He wouldn't dare to offend the young master." The temples in the human realm were almost just decorations with no formidable individuals. Because the human realm fundamentally had no conflicts. The battles were mere mundane clashes. For in the eyes of the Qixin temple, all things mundane were but ants, governed by their law. Thus, there was no inclination to intervene whatsoever. While there were conflicts among the Yen Immortals, they stayed within certain limits. As for the emperors, each comfortably seated on their golden thrones, they had no need to contend or fight. As long as their strength surpassed, they would move on to even greater treasures. Of course, relying solely on consumption wouldn't do. Endlessly taking pills made breakthroughs difficult. "Now let's go." Jian Wushuang changed direction, heading straight back to the central continent of the human realm. Maluo followed closely behind. The core of the human realm, the upper vast continent. This continent, 1/10 the size of the entire human realm, housed the strongest part of the human realm's warriors. However, true experts were scarce here, despite the abundance of the best resources. The number of cultivators was remarkably low, with some cities having only a few million inhabitants. If this were the central continent of the heavenly realm, even an ordinary city would boast over 1 billion cultivators. Jian Wushuang's expression gradually darkened. Ever since he gained the power of life, his understanding of the way of life had begun to change. Seeing such practices that violated the laws of all things made him uncomfortable. The struggle for survival. Cultivators were meant to compete. The temple suppressed demonic cultivators who slaughtered or resisted forces in the earth realm. However, it was never stated that killing was forbidden. He didn't know why the Qixin temple allowed the human realm to be so unrestrained. He wondered if such negligence would ruin the human realm. In doing so, what would be the meaning of life? And where would the path of cultivation lead? He aimed to carve out a path for strength for everyone in the human realm. The sacred mountain of the human realm, the Sealgate Mountain. Located here was one of the three ancient forces of the mortal realm, the Sealgate Mountain. Jian Wushuang and Maluo did not suppress their own auras and appeared directly at the so-called summit of this sacred mountain. Looking down, all that met their eyes was the diverse panorama of mortal life. The sacred mountain was divided into 3 layers. The first layer consisted of ordinary disciples, the second layer housed Yen Immortals, Grand Yen Immortals, and Tao Lords, while only the third layer harbored the most powerful core of the Sealgate Mountain, where tens of thousands of emperors resided. Let's go down and take a look. Maluo naturally had no objections. The two descended to the first layer of the Sealgate Mountain. Looking up from here, in their mortal guise, the summit was beyond their sight, obscured by thick clouds. Outside the mountain gate, a considerable number of people had gathered because today marked the once-in-a-century entrance assessment for Sealgate Mountain. Among those gathered, each one was extraordinary, all being descendants of emperor families. They either rode giant exotic beasts or flew here, escorted by powerful individuals. Jian Wushuang and Maluo descended, and those ordinary mortals couldn't sense their presence. However, the several Tier 6 emperors at the summit suddenly discovered 2 unfamiliar super-strong beings just outside their mountain gate. The human realm wasn't that vast, and powerful individuals were scarce. Most emperors were well known, especially the Tier 6 emperors and Supreme Peak experts. Someone who had shaken the 4 corners and had their own territory. It was impossible for unfamiliar strong individuals to appear. Although occasionally powerful beings from other realms passed through the human realm on their way to the god's tomb, they generally wouldn't linger. They themselves knew that the human realm was barren, and those powerful beings didn't even bother to take a second glance. Inform the sect master. The aura of that black-robed old man is obviously that of a Supreme Peak expert, not someone we can deal with. After some discussion among the elders of the Sealed Gate Mountain, they first informed the sect master and then had the Grand Elder go to delay the other party. At this moment, the sect master of the Sealgate Mountain was still in the northern part of the human realm. Because of the battle between powerful beings in the eastern ruins, a gathering of strong individuals had taken place. It was a rare event, and naturally, it wouldn't be complete without some discussions. It was called a discussion, but in reality, it was just a bunch of old folks passing the time, heading to a bustling little island in the north to enjoy themselves. When the sect master received the news from the sect, he couldn't sit still. A major battle had just occurred in the eastern ruins, and an unknown Supreme Peak expert had appeared at the Sealgate Mountain. If there was any connection between the two, it would be a big deal. After informing the other Supreme Peak experts, they all prepared to go together to investigate. Most of the top-tier experts in the human realm were connected by blood or friendship, and when there was an urgent matter, they would team up. When the special life forms from the god's tomb attacked back then, they all joined forces to deal with it. Although it wasn't very effective, survival wasn't too difficult either. Let's go and see what kind of person it is. If it's really related to the eastern ruins, we must inform the Grand Venerable, said the sect master of the Sealgate Mountain with some concern. The other Supreme Peak experts, upon hearing the mention of the Grand Venerable, all had a change in expression. He was the strongest in the human realm. He was strong even among Supreme Peak experts, and he had created his universe secret techniques and reached unimaginable levels. Even in the Earth realm, he could be ranked among the top few figures. Even the current structure of the human realm was established personally by the Grand Venerable. Sect Master, it's better not to disturb the Grand Venerable for this matter. Let's go and take a look first before deciding, someone suggested, feeling that it might not be appropriate. After all, it was just a mysterious Supreme Peak individual. They had a group here. It would be burdensome to involve the Grand Venerable just because a Supreme Peak expert appeared. Although the sect master of the Sealgate Mountain was still uneasy, upon further thought, involving the Grand Venerable just for this matter did seem somewhat inappropriate. Perhaps it was a case of undue fear caused by a false alarm, but the recent massive battle had shaken the courage of the onlookers. In the human realm, where conflicts were rare, everything was approached with caution. Unlike the Earth realm, the human realm held a spirit that refused to surrender easily. Despite Broly's widespread slaughter in the Earth realm, the situation remained unchanged after 1,000,000 years of bloodshed. If such a scenario had unfolded in the human realm, surrender would have been swift. After reaching an agreement, several Supreme Peak beings stood up together and headed towards the sacred mountain in the central part of the continent. At this moment, Jian Wushuang and Maluo floated low in the air, observing the once-in-a-century entrance assessment below. The individuals who designed this assessment had a sense of humor. They had disciples from various sects disguise themselves as wanderers and collaborate with the scions of noble families during the assessment. During each assessment, these wanderers, seemingly just like the scions, entered Sealgate Mountain, but they were all allies behind the scenes. True wanderers never had the chance to enter Sealgate Mountain. The assessments in the mundane world were simple, just competitions with no real evaluation of individual potential or efforts to stimulate it. It paled in comparison to the trials conducted in the past, especially the covert manipulations. Though some true wanderers managed to come here, they lacked support and were generally weak. The powerful ones were rare, and those comparable to the scions were even rarer. Even if there were individuals comparable in strength, the disciples of Sealgate Mountain, disguised as wanderers, would confront the real wanderers with overwhelming force. A true solitary cultivator named Xianxia was the strongest among the participants in this entrance assessment, even surpassing the offspring of prestigious families. His skin was dark, and his physique had been tempered to the utmost, making conventional means ineffective against his defense. Unfortunately, this time, he drew lots against a Sealgate Mountain disciple disguised as a solitary cultivator. The realm and strength of that Sealgate Mountain disciple exceeded Xianxia's understanding. Clang! A sword pierced through the air, as fast as thunder. Many spectators couldn't see the sword shadow clearly. When the sword came to a halt, a blood dance splattered on the arena. "Explosive sword!" exclaimed a scion of a prominent family, his pupils contracting in surprise. Being able to execute the explosive sword demonstrated the mastery of sword chi. A wandering cultivator capable of wielding sword energy made these scions of prestigious families feel somewhat inferior. This year's wandering cultivators are too formidable. I wouldn't stand a chance against either of them, a young girl from a major clan fretted, touching her accessories with a worried expression. The elder behind her, however, had a slight smile, saying, "Entering Sealgate Mountain doesn't solely depend on strength. Look at that Xianxia. Isn't he quite unlucky?" The girl, upon hearing this, didn't feel pleased but rather expressed regret. Such formidable strength, and as a wandering cultivator. It's a pity not to enter Sealgate Mountain. Most of these scions were only 100 years old, with limited knowledge of the world. Naturally, they were unaware of some of Sealgate Mountain's methods. However, the elder was knowledgeable. He had walked this path before, not attaining immortalhood, spending 100,000 years practicing on Sealgate Mountain before descending. Returning to the clan, he instructed the younger generations. Upon hearing the girl's regret, the elder first paused, surprised at human nature. Then his expression returned to normal. Thinking of something, he began to instruct sternly, "Survival of the fittest. There's nothing to regret. If they can't enter, that's their fate, unchangeable." "Oh!" The girl nodded somewhat understandingly, not dwelling on it. But that seed of destiny was already planted deep within her heart. The battles on the arena were mostly one-sided. Among the disciples of the clans, there were few Sais. Most merely watched the spectacle unfold with disinterest. However, among the wandering cultivators, there were furrowed brows and murmurs of discontent. A cultivator with considerable strength muttered, "The guy using the sword is too ruthless. We're all wandering cultivators. Is it necessary to be so harsh? It's a pity for Xianxia. I thought he would definitely enter Sealgate Mountain this time. I didn't expect a sword expert to appear out of nowhere. No big deal. There are talents beyond talents. At least this time, 4 of our wandering cultivators secured a spot in Sealgate Mountain. In the past, it was at most 2 or 3. It seems that in the future, we wandering cultivators will have the upper hand." Upon hearing this, the other wandering cultivators found some solace in their hearts and chimed in, "Exactly. Those clan disciples just have more resources than us. If everyone had the same resources, they might not even secure a few spots among the 10. In midair, Jian Wushuang observed it all silently, shaking his head. Such non-existent hopes were the most crushing. On the side, Maluo's gaze revealed a hint of killing intent. "What's wrong? Even you, a powerful practitioner of the demonic path, can't stand watching." Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. Cultivators in the Maluo nation followed the demonic path, and this Maluo elder was naturally a powerful practitioner of the demonic path. Maluo, however, shook his head and said, "Young master, you're mistaken." "Mistaken?" Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Mistaken where? He really wanted to hear the reasoning behind this from Maluo elder. "Young master, do you know where we practitioners of the demonic path come from?" Maluo sighed. "Most of us are almost all wandering cultivators. Some of the clan disciples who embark on the demonic path do so because of the unfairness within their families. They were not inherently practitioners of the demonic path, nor were they heartless. In fact, they were similar to those on the righteous path. It was just a different way. The unfairness within families is judged by family heads and clan leaders. But who judges the unfairness faced by wandering cultivators?" The more Maluo spoke, the angrier he became, and bloodshot streaks appeared in his eye sockets. "It's not that we willingly choose the demonic path. We are forced onto this path. If we don't become strong, we'll be bullied. In the mortal world, people fight for food, and among cultivators, they vie for talents and treasures. Even mortal forces have kings ruling the world, let alone cultivator forces. A lone individual rises to the heavens. In a family, often emerges a formidable figure capable of propelling the entire clan into the ranks of top powers, covering the entire family with their individual strength. This is why, no matter where one goes, people tend to band together. The power of one person is limited, but the strength of a group is boundless. The Earth realm might eventually tread the path of the human realm, but not at this moment. The human realm is predetermined, and lone cultivators will never have their day." As Maluo spoke of these things, he reminisced about his own past. This is a tale from the history of the Maluo nation. Jian Wushuang listened attentively, feeling both shocked and admiring of Maluo. It was a time of extreme hardship. Maluo was born in a dilapidated stone temple. His begging mother, violated by another beggar, gave birth to him. However, that beggar had long since disappeared, leaving his mother alone to raise him. Unfortunately, due to excessive bleeding during childbirth, his mother froze to death in the stone temple a month later. Maluo was rescued by an old monk from the stone temple. Under the care of the old monk, Maluo had a relatively decent childhood. At the age of 12, the old monk went out to beg for alms and never returned. After achieving enlightenment, Maluo tried to trace the old monk's whereabouts, but to no avail. At that time, Maluo was very young, and within the stone temple, there wasn't even a decent bowl. He had to rely on the skills his mother had left him. A beggar. As he begged along the way, he searched everywhere for information about the old monk. It was during this time that he encountered the benefactor who set him on the path of cultivation for the first time. The princess of the Maluo kingdom in the mundane world. Although she belonged to a mortal dynasty, the princess was an outer disciple of a cultivation sect. It was because of that princess that Maluo came to be called Maluo. He remembered that when he met her, he hadn't eaten for 3 days, and when he was about to faint from hunger on the road, he encountered the princess. Although he was somewhat delirious from hunger at that time, he remembered her appearance for a lifetime. Speaking up to this point, Maluo's eyes held reminiscence and a hint of sadness. The grace of a single meal. He still couldn't forget that bowl of rice from back then. It was because of that meal that he not only embarked on the path of demonic cultivation but also led the Maluo kingdom from a mundane mortal dynasty to the cultivation world. It then became a peak force, a top power in the Earth realm. Unfortunately, the princess had long departed. Jian Wushuang, after listening, also understood. No wonder the Maluo kingdom's royal family had such a weak foundation, yet they could retain this elder. It turned out emotions had been at play, gratitude and repaying a kindness. From a commoner to the supreme peak. This journey, even Jian Wushuang found it unbelievable. Once a beggar who couldn't afford a meal, now stepping into the path of cultivation. Now, he understood why Maluo said he was wrong. Although the Earth realm was chaotic with the dominance of the demonic path, the fact that even a beggar could embark on the path of cultivation indicated that the threshold for the lower class was not high. At least in terms of bloodline, there were almost no barriers. As long as you have the aptitude for cultivation, you can tread this path. Compared to the secret realms in the human realm, the Earth realm is a paradise. Those wandering cultivators in the human realm, relying on their own exploration, face numerous difficulties in reaching this stage. If they enter ancient forces like Sealgate Mountain, they might soar to new heights. However, it was unfortunate that they were hindered by their backgrounds. This was a significant loss. As Jian Wushuang, who was expected to become the successor of Qishan Temple in the future, he couldn't just watch this happen. He had to make a change. On the arena, the one called Xianxia had already been defeated. There were not many miraculous reversals. The difference in strength was too great. Similar to how the Emperor slaughtered the Yen Immortals. The Sealgate Mountain disciple who disguised himself as a wandering cultivator not only defeated Xianxia but also crippled his cultivation. It was an utter annihilation. With the help of the other wandering cultivators, Xianxia struggled to stand up. Watching the 10 individuals who successfully entered Sealgate Mountain on the arena, his fear and reluctance were palpable. After bitter cultivation, crossing mountains and valleys for decades, now he stood at the doorstep. Brother Xianxia, don't be too sad. With your talent, even if you can't enter Sealgate Mountain, you can still join other weaker sections. Your future is boundless, someone comforted. However, Xianxia knew himself. His cultivation was crippled, and there was no hope. Unlike the despondent exit of these wandering cultivators, the situation was unchanged for the family disciples. Even if they didn't enter Sealgate Mountain, their cultivation remained intact, and they could try joining other sects. As for the wandering cultivators, crossing the range of one sect to reach another was simply a fantasy. In the vast mountains and rivers, demonic beasts roamed freely, and reaching Sealgate Mountain was already considered quite impressive. At this moment, Jian Wushuang could no longer bear to watch and revealed his figure directly. The people below instantly sensed a terrifying aura, standing over them like the sun itself. Jian Wushuang and Maluo floated in mid-air, their gazes coldly fixed on the people below. The elders of those clans, having seen much in their lives, recognized the extraordinary nature of the newcomers, immortals undoubtedly. Hastily, they respectfully paid their respects. We pay our respects, immortal above. Even the wandering cultivators realized the situation and bowed in reverence. Jian Wushuang showed no favor to the younger generation of the clans, landing directly among the wandering cultivators, leaving the clan's powerful figures puzzled. The younger ones were unaware, but the powerful figures of the clans were well aware of the rules of this world. Those who could attain the status of immortals were either from prominent families or large forces, and they wouldn't bother with wandering cultivators. However, Jian Wushuang paid no attention to these individuals and walked straight towards Xianxia. A strand of life power transformed into all things, converging into Xianxia's body. Buzz! An aura erupted from within Xianxia in an instant, and several cultivators who were assisting him were directly shaken back several steps. Xianxia, previously heavily injured and disabled, made a complete recovery. Not only did his cultivation recover, but his strength also skyrocketed. And it happened in an instant. The younger generation of the clans found the scene shocking. Xianxia's aura had surpassed even the formidable figures within their own clans. On the arena, the disciple of Sealgate Mountain who had previously defeated Xianxia had a slight change in expression. His task was originally to cripple these wandering cultivators sent by the sect, but unexpectedly, the situation had taken a turn for the better for the other party. Jealousy surged for a moment. Xianxia, on the other hand, was very excited. It was his first time encountering an immortal. He didn't expect the other party to help him restore his strength and even assist in advancing his cultivation. Now, he could barely control his own power. According to the hierarchy rules of the human realm, he was now in the law domain realm. Immediately, he knelt down, respectfully saying, "Thank you, Immortal." Jian Wushuang revealed a faint smile, turning to Maluo and said, "His potential is good. Help me take him as a disciple." "Yes." Maluo was somewhat surprised. He knew Jian Wushuang disapproved of what the human realm did, but he didn't expect that he would take a mortal disciple at the first attempt. However, the other's potential was indeed considerable. Even in the Earth realm, without a background, he could still tread the path of immortality. With Jian Wushuang's guidance, becoming an emperor was not difficult. Hearing that someone wanted to take him as a disciple, Xianxia was first stunned, then reacted, turning towards Maluo and kowtowing heavily 3 times. Maluo looked at him with some joy. This young man with dark skin and short hair had a character similar to his own, a determined spirit. Taking him in would be a good choice. On the side, Jian Wushuang watched the other's joy but sighed inwardly. Giving a fish was not as good as teaching how to fish. This principle was understood, but truly implementing it was extremely difficult. To bring about change, he needed to stir up chaos in the human secret realm. If he did that, even the divine temple might have to intervene. So he needed to come up with a strategy. To build a peak power. This was the human realm. Acting recklessly would be inappropriate. Instead, it might offend all the forces in the entire human realm. Offending these people would make it impossible to help the low-level loose cultivators, even if he wanted to.